Yeah, if you can afford it and you have a tenant, it's good to rent it.
Toxic solvent proved to shorten the worker's lifespan.
I mean, especially if you have someone that, I mean, we've never heard them complain, so.
No. She said she was planning on staying there for a year for sure. Because she's not sure which one. Because she just broke up with her boyfriend or something like that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's what Candace was saying.
Of course, the mass production of goods require mass marketing.
Yeah, a year or two or something like that. So
While
I was
people
like, okay,
once
well,
bought
I think she'd
products
want to
for
stay
the
longer.
mass
Hopefully
production
she likes it
separates the
and that she
consumer
will want
from
to
the
stay
producer
longer.
and replaces this human relationship with the brand.
And I told Candace, like, and a lot of the people too, it's really hard to find
now
a good
consumers
tenant
go to the
pay
store and
somebody
buy a
like that.
box shipped from 1,000 miles away. The brand image, in this case, a
And it's
smiling
not going to
Quaker,
ruin your place, right?
substitutes
Or
a real human
you're
relationship
not paying and
and is
stuff like that,
carefully
right?
designed to appeal to
Hey, what's going on back there?
To pull that off,
Go for Kip if you
producers
want.
turned again to technology. Mass production
that person
led to
doing?
mass marketing, but mass marketing required
Oh,
mass
his
media
bulb is
to reach
burned
the
out.
actual masses. We may like to
Bulb
think
is
that
burned
radio
out?
Yeah,
and
his
TV
turn signal
were
bulb. That's
invented
why
so
he's
that
like
entertainers could reach bigger
in the front.
audiences.
Yeah.
But the proliferation of broadcast media was subsidized by America's new national brand, which gained access to consumers coast to coast. Marketers of the period believed they were performing a patriotic duty, fostering allegiance to mass market brands that iconized American values and ingenuity, but the collateral damage was immense. Consumer culture
I never noticed the dog at the
media
bottom of that
technologies
picture
became
there.
the main way to persuade people to desire possessions over relationships and social status over social connection. The less fruitful the relationships in a person's life, the better target that person was for synthetic ones. The social fabric was undone. Since at least the industrial age, technology has been used as a way to make humans less valued and essential to labor.
Took me a minute, I was like,
This is the legacy that digital technology.
Sorry,
An excerpt from.
I'm gonna go. I'll just walk in.
traffic is, it's not as bad as it looks, but
Hello everybody and welcome back to Revolutionary Left Radio. On today's episode we'll be talking with Mike Ruge about Douglas book,
can you get
Human,
a grilled
who
cheese
explores
sandwich
concepts related
also?
to technology, market
don't have that one with
capitalism,
me.
Oh, okay.
socialism,
I'll go in then.
alienation.
What do you want?
just a strawberry,
Like a icy one or the coffee, the creamy one?
the creamy one. It's the chills. I think they're called chills, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're on the move. We're rolling out.
Direct human activity today, and he actually sees the invention of the corporation on par with the invention of an
Walks
abstract
everywhere,
God.
right? And he
Which
looks
at
like
first
he's learning how
glance,
to walk,
yeah,
right? And
you're not really sure about when you first read that, but actually, really corporations and the thought world that they produce certainly seem to play a much bigger role in our life today than any abstract God. And he does make a distinction there also between the two, monotheism.
Continue on current road for about 2 kilometers.
About that a bit in some of his other books, but corporatism, which is basically corporate capitalism, actually disconnects us from each other.
Just give me the one.
And maybe even from our own
Okay,
soul.
cool.
He's basically talking about alienation from others and ourselves. As far as examples, I mean, it's the water we live in. Why does the world look the way it does? Anywhere you go outside, why are there parking lots? Why does everyone have to have their own car? Why does your phone track your every movement and try to distract you with trivial news or ads? It'd be hard to find an example of a pro-human agenda. Your school, does your school want to teach you how to think and be politically active and strive for a meaningful life, or are the school directors on the phone with the CEOs asking how they should best train you for your future career in a cubicle?
Bagel.
Yeah, so he calls it.
How do you call it?
But
A
it
bagel?
absolutely echoes the Marxist concept of alienation. Just the whole capitalist system is really in its own lane, going after its own goals, and it's really not at all concerned about what is best for the most amount of humans or what's conducive to true human flourishing or self-actualization. And of course, this is embedded in every part of our lives and leads to, among many other things, the sort of eruption, anxiety, depression, and other forms of neuroticism and mental illness as we, social beings, are trying to exist in a world that is less and less social and less human or oriented towards what makes human life worth living more and more time. And that kind of leads well into this next
nugget.
In 700 meters, turn slight right onto Perimeter Highway.
during our evolutionary history to argue that we are primarily social animals. And you know, using nature to understand human societies and to make normative
Good
claims
for
about
Munchie.
how we should structure our societies has often had a reactionary history. Some
be,
prominent
In
examples
300 meters, turn slight right onto Perimeter Highway.
and lobster hierarchy arguments, and what our friends over at Seriously Wrong in a recent episode called fascist naturalism.
Turn slight right onto Perimeter Highway.
Nature that you can then transplant onto human society and use that to justify brutal hierarchies of domination and exploitation. So it's fascist in that sense. So with that in mind and with that history, you know, very much in mind, what is Rushkoff
What is that
arguing
all
for
about,
in this
Munchkin,
chapter,
eh?
and what are your sort of reflections and thoughts on it?
So I don't think he's trying to, you know, build a philosophy off of his concept of human nature. I think he's trying to dispel those things a bit. You know, it's a bit like if you
Continue on the current road for about 2 kilometers.
saw the chickens were, you know, just tearing each other to pieces. And if you were to say, okay, well, that's, you know, the life of a chicken is nasty, brutish, and short. But he's making the argument that, you know, that's chickens in one environment. And when he's talking about humans, he's trying to make the case that humans are worth saving, basically. A lot of the ideas that we have about human nature just in mainstream thought, you know, these are the products of an ideology and environment.
In 700 meters, turn slight right onto exit 69 to
I was
Gimli.
wondering why you wanted
He was invited to speak
No,
at
I was gonna
some
sneak
future
in. I didn't expect him to do it as well.
and it paid really,
I didn't, plus I
really
didn't
well.
want to get
so
trapped
he went
behind.
ahead.
In 300 meters, turn slight right onto exit 69 to Gimli. Turn slight right onto exit 69 to Gimli.
And he's brought it to this small room.
Oh, that one's different.
It's a green room, you know.
In
It's like I'm
400
starting it, like-
meters, keep right onto
Right.
Gimli.
Millionaires just sitting around, sitting around, and
the
you
other
start
one now?
asking them questions. They've been around
Wait
the bush
till
for a
I
while,
get
but
into
pretty
the
soon they get
highway
into the
here.
reason.
Keep right onto Gimli.
We want to know, first of all, where to build their secret bunkers. The shit hits the fan, and then also how to control their guards after money is no longer an issue.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, you know, these are the kind of things that he sees and that he deals with. I actually have a quote which is pretty great. So when he's talking about this, he says, you know, so this single question occupied us for the rest of the hour. They knew armed guards would be required to protect their compounds from the angry mobs.
Continue on the current road for more than 50 kilometers.
What would stop the guards from choosing their own leaders? The billionaires considered using special combination locks on the food supply that only they knew, or making guards wear disciplinary collars of some kind to return to their survival. And they also wondered about building robots to serve as guards, if that technology could be developed in time.
It's like just time.
When he's talking about this human nature, it's not in a Jordan Peterson sense. He's not trying to derive an thought from it. It is basically.
The Oscar just like
Well,
grab it.
when
and
they
then
asked him this,
stuck in there somehow.
his response.
I was gonna hold the bag so you can pull it out.
Oh.
That's what my idea was to
Actually
do.
treat those people really, really well right now.
Pull it out. Oh.
They should be engaging with their security staffs as if they were members of
And I
their
was
own
gonna hold the
family.
bag so you could just pull a sandwich
Maybe they
right
can
out.
expand their ethos of inclusivity to the rest of their business practices, supply chain management, sustainability efforts, wealth distribution, and maybe there'll be less of a chance that the
Just playing with that piece.
event will happen in the first place. They didn't buy it, you know,
Yeah,
but
of course.
I would have paid money to be there though and hear your suggestions.
My God, yeah, it's like anything that we can do that doesn't involve, you know, treating human beings well, or maybe restructuring societal institutions that are leading us to have this paranoid, you know, fear fantasy of dystopia and how we're going to handle our armed guards. I mean, Christ, that's hilarious though.
Yeah, he said, you know, the more we are committed to this view of the world, the more we come to see human beings as the problem and technology as the solution. The very essence of what it means to be human is treated less as a feature than above. No matter their embedded biases, technologies are declared neutral. Any bad behaviors they induce in us are just a reflection of our own corrupted core. And, again, that's sort of that would be more of a Jordan Peterson viewpoint, I think, that this stuff is just in us, and it doesn't really matter what we do. We're always going to be this way. He would probably suggest putting rubber bands on their hands or something.
Yeah, but and this is really getting at, probably his broad argument generally, which is this very idea of like, technology in a certain context could have a liberating effect, could lead to what those on the left tongue-in-cheek call post-scarcity, luxury communism or whatever. And that's just to point to the possible future where automation and new technologies are not used simply to, replace the worker in the factory or become literally robot guards for CEOs in a future dystopia, but could actually be used to, provide the highest quality of life to as many human beings as possible. But that really doesn't even cross the mind of those who have more or less bought in to capitalism and, are ready to see barbarism before they can even think of entertaining the idea of socialism.
Right.
So let's go on and move on to this next part of the discussion, and it revolves around the concept of media revolutions. Rushkoff goes on to assert that throughout human history, many media revolutions have occurred, but for the most part, they've become co-opted by the powers that be, sort of like what we were just talking about, stripped of what is possibly revolutionary about them, and in the process are reduced to just mere instruments for a ruling class's agenda. So can you talk about what he means by media revolutions and how their revolutionary potential is so often lost?
Yeah, so television, the telegraph, the internet, all of these things are media revolutions. They change everything. And his point is that whoever controls media controls society. Yeah, so he says here, each new media revolution appears to offer people a new opportunity to wrest that control from the view and reestablish the social bonds that media has compromised. But so far, anyway, the people, the masses, have always remained one entire media revolution behind those who would dominate them. And then he gives some examples on each one. Basically with the invention of text, originally we might have become a literate culture, but at first, text was just used merely to keep track of possessions and slaves. And then when writing was put in the service of religion, only the priests could read text and understand Hebrew and Greek. Basically, the priests won the elite capability of literacy. And then the printing press emerged in the Renaissance. People gained the ability to read, but only the king and his allies had the power to
for a month. Like, who's gonna go on a fucking hour and a half
television?
I mean, it's good on him for trying to make friends.
Yeah, and I told him, it's a long weekend.
So
everybody has their own plans. They've planned this in a while, right?
That's really interesting. We just had a conversation on the Sandinista revolution, and in that conversation we talked about how various socialist revolutions, especially in the global south, have resulted in these huge, increases in literacy among the population. So this idea that these technologies are kept away from the quote-unquote rabble and used at the higher levels of society is not only something in the distant past, but is something that still operates today on a global level with regards to the globally privileged, the global ruling class, and the people in the global south who, their entire lives sort of live in this context in which the global north is dominating and extracting valuable resources from their regions against their own interests. And so literacy for a lot of these people with the revolution, the Sandinista revolution was in 79, and there was a huge percentage of that population that couldn't even read. And we explored just what it means to be able to read, like what opens up for a human being when they can begin to read. And that was just a couple of decades ago, a decade before I was even born. And there's still parts of this planet where people are illiterate. And it's just horrifying. It's not something in our past, it's something very much in our present. But going on to the next chapter, and this chapter is entitled Economics, and Rushkoff says something interesting, and this is part of what I read in the intro to this episode, but I want to reiterate a part of it. Rushkoff says, quote, "Technology is not driving itself. It doesn't want anything. Rather, there is a market expressing itself through technology, an operating system beneath our various computer interfaces and platforms that is often unrecognized by the developers themselves. this operating system is called capitalism, and it drives the anti-human agenda in our society at least as much as any technology, end quote. So what are Rushkov's arguments about and against capitalism in this chapter, in this book, and more broadly in his work?
What's driving, like as an example, like social media technology is largely market forces in the attention and surveillance economy. Social media doesn't have to operate this way. It doesn't have to apply slot machine casino logic to try and keep you hooked and spend longer on the platform. It doesn't have to track everything you do so that your information can be sold to advertisers. It doesn't have to try and manipulate you with content that targets your basest instincts at the expense of your sanity and well-being. Tristan Harris, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
That was a mule.
He was a Google ethicist, but he's been very vocal
a mix
about
of a
this sort
donkey
of
and a
thing. He
horse.
calls
You don't see that
this
very often,
technology's race to the bottom of the brainstem. The AI is programmed to hijack our attention and then use whatever it learns each time to upgrade itself. Meanwhile, it's polarizing and outraging people and encouraging trolling and marginalization of people, and it's finding ways not just to predict people's next actions, but even influence them in ways that will make them more predictable. He puts it very well. He says essentially it upgrades itself by downgrading humans.
Yeah, have you had any have you had to take social media breaks? Have you had any strain on your mental and emotional well-being by being on these social media platforms personally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The big wake-up call for me actually was reading a book called The Shallows
No
by
more
Nicholas
bacon,
Kahn.
okay, Abby? It's actually all gone
It's just
now.
absolutely amazing. I actually have a quote from that book. He says, what the net seems to be doing, and he's talking about his own experience, what it seems to be doing is chipping away my capacity for concentration and contemplation. Whether I'm online or not, my mind now expects to take in information the way the net distributes it, in a swiftly moving stream of particles. Once I was a scuba diver in the sea of words, now I zip along the surface like a guy on a jet ski. And his argument overall was basically, that the net's interactivity gives us powerful new tools for finding information, expressing ourselves, and conversing with others. It also turns us into lab rats, constantly pressing levers to get tiny pellets of social or intellectual nourishment. Marshall McLuhan is kind of the main media theorist guy. He describes a new medium as an extension of man, but he says, it's also an amputation. It will give you
It's all gone, Munchkin. I have no more now, okay?
And we see that pretty clearly when you try to
That's it, sweet
compare,
potato.
for instance, a very literate culture that reads a lot, which was back in the 1800s. You listen to presidential debates in that time where they debate for 3-4 hours, take a break together, and then go back and debate for another 3 hours, and then you compare that to a television culture. 20 seconds. What do you got? Image is everything.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a really stark difference. I think a lot of people,
Are you sure?
like when they go back, maybe they just watch movies or read books from a previous time or find
She
quotes,
grabbed it and she's like,
man, look how articulate people were, how enamored with words they were, and it seems so lost today. And that's part of the reason. One thing that was a wake-up call for me, or one of many wake-up calls, because I'm very sensitive to this topic. Is just the concept of when I'm driving
the Goodreads app on
my
my
phone or whatever, and when you come across the red light, you have now a choice to make. Do you sit with yourself in silence? Can you just be able to sit with your own thoughts for 15 seconds until that light turns green, or do you feel the urge in your hand to reach into your pocket, pull up whatever app possibly click in that short amount of time you have, and scroll through stuff you'll immediately forget and adds nothing to your day, but it feeds into this terrible human impulse of being afraid.
It's on the middle screen on the left side, second
being
throttle roll from the bottom.
Being uncomfortable being with yourself and your own thoughts for a period of time. I know there's been studies that have shown that people would prefer, getting administered an electric shock rather than having to sit alone for 30 minutes in a quiet room just with their own thoughts.
And then look up The Shallows.
From our own silence and our own thoughts and ourselves is really just amplified exponentially by this really attention-grabbing, all these platforms that really degrade your ability
I think
to
that sounds
focus
right.
on anything
What
else
is it?
in your life.
And one
One
is
thing I
past
try to do to
shallows.
offset it is meditate
One is
on a
out of
daily
the
basis, right?
shallows,
Meditation
the
works in the
shallows.
exact
The
opposite.
shallows.
It is you
This one's
taking
the shallows,
specific
what
amounts
the
of time
internet is
every
doing
day,
to our
sitting
brains.
alone with
That
your
one?
thoughts,
Yeah, what's
in
the rating
silence,
on it?
watching how your mind and body sort of interact with its environment and how thoughts are
3.8.
forming. It really
Okay, put that on my
taking
want to
a
read
moment
list,
to sit
please.
there and
So,
through that.
it's the
This was
the
If
what?
that's the right one, put it on my want to
Hey,
read list.
hey, want to
I
read?
see
Yeah,
myself,
thank you.
fall prey to it. So I've been trying to take a lot more social media breaks, and I think I'm
That's it?
about due
Yeah,
for another one.
that's all.
Yeah, that's exactly.
What? You didn't want any
Fisher
cheese,
actually
Abby?
said
I
the
gave you
same
some
thing
cheese.
about,
Just to be.
the internet
What do
used
you
to
want,
be some place that you
What
would
do
go,
you want,
but
water?
now, you know, it's in your pocket, it's with you. Now,
Smell
now
that
every
grass.
moment you have to make that choice, you have to opt out. And just making that choice in itself is very distracting.
Yeah, exactly right. And then
Do you have any
Cheese?
toys? Do you have a toy to give her?
Like what some on the left call surveillance capitalism, and I think we've all had that experience of talking to your friends about something and then seeing on your phone advertisements for the very thing you were just talking about, and you didn't
There's
put it
something
in, you
to play
didn't
with.
Google search it,
Probably
and
what
there
it
was
is.
nothing that was actually put
Okay.
into your phone. But
First, I
it
just wanna
almost
put
seems
this
to be a
together.
toy. You're like, how did this happen? Like, how did it actually hear me? But it happens so often to everybody that I know. And it's like, it can't be a coincidence. There has to be something here that's picking up on keywords that are
What,
being
you want some
discussed,
cheese or
and your
not?
phone is basically always listening to you, you know?
No, that's absolutely true. And yeah, I believe that's Google. They really do that. They do occasionally listen in one way or another. You know, one problem with the algorithms that do this kind of thing is they're kind of a black box. You can't really explain to anyone, or no one can really even look into what it is they're doing half the time. But that is absolutely true. People have tested this in a couple of different ways, and what you're saying is absolutely true. They do listen from time to time, and they do target that based on what they hear you say.
Vindicated. So you're not a conspiracy theorist. Okay, so one of the things that I thought was interesting is this concept of mechanomorphism. He brings it up in this book, Team Human. So what is mechanomorphism, and what role does it play in Rushkoff's broader argument in this text?
I'm already worried that in order to explain mechanomorphism, I'm going to have to say a word that's very hard for me to say, which is anthropomorphism.
Beautiful, you nailed it.
Been practicing it all day. There's actually an old insight from Marx here that technologies create the ways in which people perceive reality. One thing he says, you know, as individuals express their life, so they are. He's basically saying the same thing as Marshall McLuhan when Marshall McLuhan said, you know, we shape our tools and thereafter they shape us. So anthropomorphism is when you project human qualities onto a machine. Like, you know, you look at a Jeep's headlights and grill and you think, you know, it looks like a cute human face or something, or you slap your computer so that you know, let it know that you want it to move faster or something. But mechanomorphism is when you project machine values onto people, and this is actually very important. And you'll know what I mean if you're processing the information that I'm sending to you. Basically, what he's saying is you begin seeing yourself and others and everything in terms of the dominant technology. So, you know, when Marx says technology discloses man's mode of dealing with nature and creates the conditions of intercourse by which they relate to each other, by which we relate to each other, that's another way of saying basically the medium is the message, but from Marshall McLuhan. Just to hit that again, I feel like I didn't explain it too well. When you live in a digital age and you use language like processing information or multitasking or any of these things, it's important to remember how important language is to our way of thinking. We think in metaphors, and if the metaphors we use are a product of our dominant inventions, then we need to pay very close attention. You know, Wittgenstein always talked about language is not merely a vehicle of thought, but also the driver. And his big quote, I think, was, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world." But really, you know, this is such an important point. Really, the point in media theory, and it's a point that Rushkoff is conversing with in this book, and he's adding to it basically the way material conditions interact with various media. But Neil Postman actually said it, I think, the most clearly. Each medium, like language itself, makes possible a unique mode of discourse by providing a new orientation for thought, expression, and sensibility. And to go back to the medium is the message. If you haven't read McLuhan, it's a very confusing thing, but Postman kind of clears it up a little bit. He agrees that it's confusing because the message is like a specific concrete statement about the world, but the mediums, the forms of
there.
media, they don't make statements. They're more like the metaphors. They mediate the statements. To go back again to Mark Fisher, who you had that show about, which I really enjoyed. He once mentioned that he was being mediated by Twitter to the world. He said, what is Twitter if not a comment box on the world? And he seemed very concerned that life outside Twitter was just becoming fodder for Twitter. That's what he said.
So sad.
And what he found really pernicious about it was that nobody is forcing him to use it. He enjoys using Twitter. This is largely what Neil Postman's "Amusing Ourselves to Death" book is about. It's a wildly interesting book. It's an absolute must-read for anyone. But basically, in the beginning, he sets up two popular dystopias that we're all familiar with. There's George Orwell's 1984.
Can you look up "Amusing Ourselves to Death"?
In 1984, Orwell warns us that we'll be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. But in Huxley's Brave New World,
I think that one might be on my
brothers
list
required to deprive people of their autonomy. As Huxley saw it, people will come to love their oppression and to adore the technologies that undo their capacity to think. Postman really drives the point home by saying Orwell basically he feared those who would ban books, whereas Huxley feared there'd be no reason to ban a book since nobody would want to read one. And the next point is probably even more prescient.
Public
That
discourse
Orwell
in the
feared
age
those
of
who
the
would
show
deprive us
business.
of information, but Huxley feared those who would give us so much information that we would be
It says watch
reduced
to
to
read, or-
passivity
Yeah, I thought it was.
and
Want to read,
egoism.
The truth is, I think it's somewhere like a combination of both, right?
It's absolutely a combination.
Certainly, the Brave New World aspects are very much in play, and our social media
how
is
did you
one
know I
example
wanted to hit the
of
peanut?
how that works. Just the general sort of malaise and complacency
Good job, Ab.
of people in the imperial core broadly speaks to that truth.
I'm not
But
too worried.
we all
We're not
know
gonna
that
use anyways,
if you
right?
go
When is
beyond
it
that,
expiring?
many of us can and have, and try to organize in the
It's
real world,
September, yeah.
confront the state,
September.
confront the capitalist economic system in a
Oh,
real
party
meaningful
stuff.
way.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ab. We're just wondering where we're gonna get our hats.
This is very good for maintaining power over a long period of time. It takes a lot of people off the board already by the
It's $5
sort
on
of Brave
purchase
New
of
World
25
aspects,
or 10
and
off
then
purchase
only
of
when
50.
some people cross that line and start to actually challenge hegemony, then do you need to bring up the totalitarian force. But it's always very quickly ushered back into this false state of status quo calm, where people start tossed back into the Brave New World aspect of things. And I think as climate change gets worse, as the center
Reading
falls
the
out of
coupons,
politics
Abby, see if
more
they're
and
good
more, as
deals.
capitalism enters another crisis. I mean, most economists are predicting that there's going to be another recession in the next couple of years. Then the mask comes off more and more, and I think we're going to have to deal with more and more repression by the state explicitly, and that will often be channeled through these very mediums, the very internet and social media that has become a daily part of our lives, will then be weaponized in certain contexts to act as mechanisms of repression by the state, and as things get worse and worse.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. On the Huxley point, where he said, he feared there'd be no reason to ban books because nobody would want to read one. One of the things that you kind of get when you're
10
reading
off,
something
one
like The
purchase
Shallows
over
by Nicholas Carr,
$25, 10% off.
you
That's
start to
actually a
wonder
good
if people
coupon.
will even be able to read
That's a
one.
good coupon.
Once you
Gimli?
get so used
Oh,
to the way
spend $25, get 10%
the
off
sheer
groceries.
amount of information
Just
and
give
the
that
type
to your
of
mom.
information that you get
They
and
shop at
receiving
Big
on
Way,
the
don't they?
internet, it becomes very hard to sit still and
Usually
read a
just
book
at
and think
store
deeply
in
about
St. Jean.
really anything for more than
Yeah, but isn't that Big Way?
But yeah, I feel like there was
It's the same
time,
owner, but it's not
especially
Big
when I was reading that book, probably where I was really buying the Huxley argument. But
Same owner,
then
but
you
that's
read the
different.
news and you read about Amazon
Different company name.
got $1 billion contract, I think, to develop facial recognition technology for ICE.
No, you don't put it in your mouth.
And,
Put it in your mouth.
you
Stick it in
just
the
start to
book
see
away, okay?
the incredible, the combination of facial recognition technology and drones, and you start to think, well, yeah, maybe that's the bigger. Clearly, they're both big fears, but yeah, I definitely agree with you that.
You actually have to go to the one on Toulon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what? That's right. I remember looking at that and thinking it was a really good coupon, and then realizing it was only for the one in
But certainly
Toulon.
that inability to think deeply, to reflect and to concentrate on it.
Well, that's wild. That's really wild. 10% off groceries.
Whittled away,
Right.
and that serves the status quo as well. If people have an attention span that is more and more like a goldfish's every day, it becomes very hard to do the necessary intellectual work that it really requires to understand this system, right? To bridge the gap between the surface of things and the actual deep structures of things and how they actually operate. So it sort of serves a multi-pronged purpose in that regard, and it's sort of horrifying. And I try to force myself to not only the meditation thing, but to read like novels and stuff. It's very hard to find the time these days. But like right now, I'm reading Carl Nosgaard's My Struggle, the Norwegian author, and he has this 6-volume. It's supposed to be amazing or whatever, but it's really like every single volume is like hundreds and hundreds of pages, and you work through some of the mundane details of his life at different points in his life. And I kind of use that. I'm using that currently to sort of offset this attention span destruction that I undergo every day on social media and internet broadly. Do you have any things that you go towards to try to increase your attention span and work against this current in our society?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just like you, that book sounds very up my alley. I'm actually writing that down so I can pick that one up later.
You would love that.
I recently read Black Boy by Richard Wright, and it was absolutely amazing. But yeah, reading is really phenomenal. This kind of thing. Usually I'll have sort of a heavy book that I try to take on, and then I have like 3 different grades of book basically. Once my mind is exhausted by something, almost incomprehensible, then I have something a little more palatable, and then I'll have a novel kind of for fun. But it is important for people to realize, it was Patricia Greenfield
Put my head
that
down.
concluded that every medium develops some cognitive skills at the expense of others, and that our growing use of the net and other screen-based technologies has led to the widespread and sophisticated development of visual spatial skills. We can rotate objects in our minds better than we used to be able to, but our new strengths in visual spatial intelligence go hand in hand with a weakening of our capacities for the kind of deep processing that underpins mindful knowledge acquisition, inductive analysis, critical thinking, imagination, and reflection.
That's really interesting. There's actually a benefit in the form of better visual spatial understanding and intelligence. I never really thought of that. Is that just a product of sort of interfaces that so much of this internet and social media use, that we are able to do that?
Yeah, I suppose so. One of, I think, the starkest difference is when they can look at like MRIs and things, is they look at gamers, and the neural pathways of a gamer is someone who plays video games a lot is, I think, quite different. I don't know how some people play video games regularly and also read big books. I know a few people like that, and I have no idea how they do it, because if I let myself play some video games, I'm done for. I can't play a mobile phone game and then jump right into a book. I can't switch gears that fast, and I'm amazed by people who can.
Yeah, exactly. I sort of feel like if I want to get good meditation or reading done, I have to do it in the beginning of the day, because as the day goes on, all this shit sort of piles up on top of itself and becomes much harder by the end of the night to maintain an attention span. I find it much easier to do these things in the early part of the day, because just the sort of
It's too bad we weren't listening to
just
the last one. In the last show, they were talking about The Handmaid's Tale. I was thinking you would have really thought it was interesting.
The level of concentration.
It's interesting how it's turned out right now.
In the later part of the day,
I don't know.
but I can't in the earlier part of the day.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of season 3 yet. I don't really care, dude, that much, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like it as much as the first.
It's hard to get a full
No,
grasp.
she should have left.
The interplay.
It didn't make sense to me that she didn't.
Sometimes it's culture telling you something, and sometimes it's technology telling you something. Actually, one person I think
Want me to take it away from you?
really tied with this well and
give it now.
explained many of
Well, you're not
the
supposed
things
to
that
eat
we're
it.
seeing today very well. It was actually David
Why are
Foster
so
Wallace.
quiet?
I forget when the interview was, maybe 2003.
Proposed we're going to be 10%
It was kind
off.
of early on, but he was talking about sort of the culture aspect of it. He was talking about how U.S. kids get exposed early to an idea that you are the most important thing. Your job in life is to gratify your desires, because the economy thrives on this ideology. He called America one enormous engine and temple of self-gratification and self-advancement. He was basically saying that feeling of having to obey every impulse and gratify every desire, that's not happiness, though. People need to realize, that's something that we see in children. It seemed to him to be a strange kind of slavery. Nobody talks about it as a strange kind of slavery. They talk about it as freedom of choice.
Hey, Abby.
Yeah, and David Foster Wallace, he's
What's going on back there?
influential in my life. I think you and I both read Infinite Jest. Did you read it? Did you get through it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now that's a book if you want to really hone your concentration skills.
What do you have there,
It's 1,000 pages and it goes into all these different ways. It's really a work of mastery, I think. It's really beautiful, but it's worth noting that both David Foster Wallace and Mark Fisher, they both
Where's their blanket?
killed themselves. They both died by suicide. It's kind of like heartbreaking because they were dealing with these issues. They had a very clear understanding of
Do we have
these
anything
issues,
she could
and yet
snuggle
they
with?
themselves couldn't quite seemingly surmount those problems and find solutions to them. All they could do is just point out with greater clarity the problems in hopes that maybe some of us can start to find answers and solutions that they might not have been able to find in their own personal lives. So zooming in towards the end of this discussion, and I was mentioning this a little earlier in the interview, but in previous interviews, Douglas Rushkoff has said that he is sympathetic to, or even
You know what they pointed out
I think you mentioned being
in that show about Handmaid? You know, at the end of the second season when she's leaving, and all of the Marthas are like, this way. They're all black.
But in his work, he does a good job of unearthing the ways in which capitalism
No, because it's the reverse of the Underground Railroad.
Otherwise promising technological innovations. He also has an entire chapter in this book urging people to organize.
Right, like that was how they helped to get slaves out. And what they were saying is that it was a commentary about how women of color, holy crap, I mean, there's a huge convoy, man, I don't know where he's going to go, but people of color, especially women of color, are always putting themselves on the line for white women, right?
Kinds of things that
and always putting themselves out, and then it's not reciprocated until I guess everyone turned on.
Even just to start questioning the media they consume. And people would,
that was close.
The media they consume and start to analyze it. They might start asking themselves important questions. When you're watching a show, he likes to use this as an example. I think the show is called The Bachelorette. Or
I can't take it anymore. I really can't.
Like, we don't have any toys? Anything for her to do? In her bag? Nothing?
No. I didn't bring it. Because she doesn't bring it. I don't think of you putting some in her bag for the daycare.
Sitting here, watching people embarrass themselves and enjoying it. It's strange, but as far as he's very.
I forgot to bring some toys. I didn't think of it at all.
I just assumed she'd have a stuffy or something in there, and I didn't realize that. There's nothing unreasonable that's happening right now. is like the name. I think it's a place around Gimli. I think it's like Fort Garry, Fort Richmond, kind of a thing.
In 700 meters, turn right onto Highway 590. In 300 meters, turn right onto Highway 590. Turn right onto Highway 590.
She's like 90. 719.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it is.
Continue
I thought it
on
was
current
590.
road for
I
about
didn't
2
realize
kilometers.
it was 519. stroller either. Shit.
Did?
We did?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
In 700 meters, turn left onto Railway Street. In 300 meters, turn left onto Railway Street and then turn right.
I don't think the address.
Turn left onto Railway Street and then turn right.
Well, maybe.
Turn right onto 2nd Avenue.
I can't believe this address is correct.
What
77 and a half 2nd Avenue, Gimli.
It's probably the Gimli Road.
The destination is on your left.
This is not right.
No, no way.
You have arrived at your destination. Your route guidance is finished.
They didn't even have a 77 on the street. Well, that's great. I don't know where the fuck it is.
Well, what address are you looking for?
The address of where Mom's thing is. I guess I'll just go to Gimli and see if we see Nana's car. I think we went there once last summer, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Just don't really remember where exactly.
Right on. Oh, fucking convoy of cars coming. Well, that is why we were going to Sandy Hook, because the address is wrong. Or the GPS is wrong. Interesting, they always have such different names here because of all the people from Iceland.
Usav. There was a V. Usavik.
Usavik, yeah.
Was it?
I don't know, obviously, I don't speak Icelandic. So I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but... What's going on back there, Ab? Thing I didn't know how much I wanted, how much I wanted until we had it is the adaptive cruise control. Holy fuck! It makes, I mean, not that highway driving was particularly difficult, but it makes it even easier.
It is nice.
Clouds almost look like mountains, eh?
I guess I could see how it would look like mountains, yeah.
Hey, Ab, aren't you on the lookout for Nana's, the Nana Jew mobile? I don't know, but I saw it.
What was the number that? Oh, there it is. Just far back. Huh?
Oh, I wonder if it's 2nd Avenue and they meant to put 2nd Street. Or other way around, sorry. That's where we went for coffee, right?
Yes. And our shop was like down there in that area.
I thought so too.
No through street.
Found that nice dress in that store. Yeah, like, I mean, I remember coming, but... Is that Tay? No. No. Maybe I clicked on the wrong one. Maybe they put it in as 2nd Avenue correctly and I fucked up.
Maybe we could just stop and quickly look at an address maybe.
It's definitely 77 and a half. I remember being like, and a half? What the hell? And a half, yeah.
Doesn't say and a half there.
Yeah, because I couldn't put in a half. Right?
That's interesting. Very interesting. Huh?
Oh, there it is there. Yeah, okay. I don't see Nana's car, but...
Oh, 77 and a half. Yeah, I see a news somewhere in that building. Yeah, okay.
And you can see it right on it. It says 77 and a half.
Yeah. Why are you going slower in the intersection then?
Because I wasn't sure if that was a parked car or if it looked like a parked car, but I wasn't 100% sure. Pardon me.
I don't think Mom would have a spot for her over there, probably.
No, I'm hoping to snipe a spot with a plug. That's all I'm trying to do now.
Oh, I see. Okay, there's parking.
What are you doing, man?
What are you doing? What?
That's just the way he was like flying down on me.
Are you allowed to park here?
No sign saying I can't. Let's see if the plug works. If it does, I will plug it in.
Doesn't.
Were you like walking towards the car or? Yeah, I was gonna try and move it somewhere where there might be a plug, but
people go and recycle and they sort their little bottles in different ways, you know, and they get to pat themselves on the back and think that they're doing something. And in a way, being able to do that is more harmful than if you weren't able to do something small and easy and then pat yourself on the back and you know, forget about it.
Yeah, it's almost like a release valve for
You're okay.
Right.
And you also see, like, Zizek always talks about how, like, you know, corporations will build it into their brands, like, you know, 1% of all profits goes to such and such, and so you can get your $7 Starbucks coffee in the morning and still feel like you're doing something good for the world. It's really insidious in that way. And I really think that, you know, the status quo, right, that the powers that be benefit to the extent that our politics are online. Like, certainly, obviously, there are huge advantages to being able to network across space and time that the internet offers us. But the downside of that is that so many people begin to think that their politics and their political activism, you know, should take place on these platforms. I mean, it's just about posting, it's about retweeting, it's about liking things and trying to get the quote-unquote word out. It's like, you know, just as impotent as the concept of, like, raising awareness for something. I just heard the other day, like, some rich asshole went to fucking Mount Everest and climbed it, you know, with these 100 people lines that you now see at Mount Everest for rich people. And he was doing it to raise awareness of climate change. And so he posted his selfie at the top of Everest on Instagram to raise awareness about climate change. And that really encapsulates the sort of absurdity of that sort of quote-unquote activism, which you really are.
When I said, when I was pregnant once, and you're like, what? Did you say you were pregnant just now? I didn't look you. When I said, right, yeah, I was pregnant, could you get the cat litter, right?
Right.
Oh, no, I knew what you were saying.
Overton
Yeah, I
window
remember that now.
needs to shift.
Wherever, if it slips, it slips. It's not the end of the world.
Because
No, I know.
so much of
It's actually a few times where I really wanted to tell my mom and then the other two actually, right?
You can tell them whatever you want, yeah.
Invisible, visible, so people can
Because I don't really know how far along I am, that's
exactly
the
what
thing,
you're saying.
right?
That sometimes when you think
Am I
that
a
you
month?
are
Am I a
rebelling,
month and a half?
you know,
Am I
you're
2
really
months?
you're just playing a part in the game.
Yeah, that demystifying process that Rushkoff does on the topic of technology and how it actually operates in our lives
Did you put it on
is
for me?
important.
Thank you, bud.
All we're trying to do all the time here is demystify history, demystify theory, demystify your own life and your own experiences. And insofar as Rushkoff achieves that, he's doing something important, in my opinion. Last question here, before we get into recommendations. What lessons and what core lessons and core insights do you think leftists specifically should or could pull out of this work or Rushkoff's broader work, or just out of our discussion tonight? What are some key points you want to highlight?
The main thing is
Yeah, because there's lots of people going every way, so
question everything that
they use them deliberately so people don't build up to
your
speed.
relationships to anything
Put them in
else.
places where they really don't
It's
need
just
them.
like when all you have is a hammer, you know, everything looks like a nail. That's sort of an easy way to kind of think about it. You know, every technology that we use sort of has within itself certain convenient uses. You know, it has certain directions that it's going to pull you, and you just need to be aware. And also, we didn't discuss really too much. One thing that's going to be coming in the future, and this is something that you can hear very well. I think it's probably episode 74 of the Team Human podcast. That, I think, was kind of an eye-opener. They also have a very good one with Amy Herzog on the Amazon cloud industry complex, whatever they call it. But these are very important things to watch out for. You know, watch which way technology is going. So one important thing is like algorithms setting fails, for instance. There's a certain way in which we
We're still going to the
naturally
Winnipeg
assume
beach?
that these
Oh, we'll go
machines
past
are
it, but I
going to
don't
be
plan to stop
unbiased
there.
Okay.
and racist. But
Yeah.
listening to these conversations with Douglas Rushkoff,
If we wouldn't have stayed this long in
you'll
Winnipeg,
quickly
Gimli,
learn that
maybe
the way that these machines are actually
we could have,
learning is
Maybe I will quickly, because I feel like a drink.
taking
I was debating on whether I want to get a
as it
Slurpee or
is
not.
now, and then producing.
Yeah. I
So
was thinking I was
every
having
bias
some
that we
cold
currently
too.
Yeah, well, maybe we can stop and get an ice cream.
The iced tea was just so good. I just couldn't stop drinking it.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had more.
Of sterility.
Alright, we'll go
It's
through the
gonna
town,
look like, well,
find
it
somewhere to
couldn't be
run
wrong,
and get a cold drink.
It's a machine that doesn't care, the color of your skin. But really, that's a very interesting thing to me, because that's going to be the next, back when you and I used to talk with anarcho-capitalists or something, libertarians, they're always
We should
talking
put her
about
mirror
the
in.
market, it's just this.
You know what I'm talking about? You know where it is?
Yeah, I know where it is. I know where it is, yeah.
It's neutral.
It's in the, like, the storage cupboard there between the entrance and the kitchen there.
Oh, yeah.
Where they want to pretend that the things that are chock full of biases and normative assumptions and premises are their ideologies aren't based in quote-unquote emotion or quote-unquote ideology, but rather they're just based on dispassionate analysis of the facts. And that very insidious strain of ideological thought
It's a bit hard for me to reach in the back munchkin.
through our technology, where the technology that we create, takes on board so much of the biases that human beings that create them have.
With Vermont? Yeah,
It's been in the heat for like 5 hours.
To us and take it as sort of neutral market, not ideologically loaded or not quote-unquote emotional. That's what the libertarians used to love to argue, right? They used to say that us on the left, we're bringing emotions into they. They're the ones that are unblinking, unflinching in the face of reality, and just telling you facts like they are.
And the facts don't care for anything.
Exactly.
And then really put more sunscreen in your face.
So is that what you were getting at with this?
I actually put a fair bit
Yeah,
on.
that's exactly.
On her face? Not really. I did a bit of her nose and her cheeks.
That we're discussing.
It's okay. Don't get yourself all worked up by it. It's just fun.
It's just nature.
I didn't do the side of her face, but
Service.
no, I know I didn't do the side of her face. It's red right now, Papa.
There will
Oh, Abby, I'm
be
sorry.
these same people saying these same things. It's neutral, it's unbiased, that's just the way it is. All of these arguments, but the way that these
Do you want
things are
more?
being built is very important.
Yeah.
They're not neutral.
Okay, we'll send you some more.
Absolutely. And the only thing I would add to all of that, as far as of this discussion, is the idea of taking seriously, taking responsibility really for your own attention span, what goes in and out of your mind, whether that's meditation, whether that's just taking a social media break, whether that is making sure you get out to the woods once a week and just walk alone. These things that are replenishing, that get your eyes and ears off of these platforms and give you some breathing space to connect with reality, connect with nature, connect with yourself, and sort of try to overcome some of the alienating effects of this technology. I think is incredibly important, and it's becoming more and more all of our responsibilities, right? You now have this whole array of technology that you can use, and that props up the responsibility of choosing when to use it and when not to use it. I think a lot of us can benefit from breaks of that sort, and I'm certainly going to take another one.
Do you remember the time that I told the fuck?
But yeah, as Mike said,
I'll figure it out.
the book that we're covering is
3:30
also a
somewhere.
podcast hosted
I mean,
by
we were only there for so long,
Rush
so.
Work. If you're interested in the discussions that we had tonight about this one book,
More?
those episodes, that podcast will really be down your alley. You'll find a lot of value. Before we let you go today,
Yeah, I think she's
what
gonna go for tip.
recommendations would you offer for people who want to learn more about what we discussed tonight? Where can listeners find you online if you want to?
Build the brand.
That's right.
Yeah, she runs a bit for Facebook.
I would say that this book was quite good.
I can't help it.
Using ourselves to death.
I know.
The postman is quite good.
Yeah,
You're a mom, it's your job,
Especially
right?
right here, you can see right here.
All of
I
these
didn't get
books
this
are
side.
actually wildly interesting. Marshall McLuhan, I think, is a little more obscure, a little more, it's more cryptic, I guess is probably the best word. Maybe steer clear of that one unless you've got some time to sit and think. But if you want things and just,
It's gonna get hard
understand
media, bigger.
how we relate
Yeah, you're gonna need to
to
kind
the
of
world,
like,
things like that.
step
I
in a
think
bit more, right?
Postman is a great way to start. Douglas Rushkoff has many, many books. Many of them are very, very good. He has one, Corporatism, or I
Not that you're not right now, right?
But how corporatism
I could do more, and the schedule sucks.
is very
The
good.
schedule really makes
Yeah,
it
I
difficult.
have like a million book suggestions. I think The Shallows by Nicholas Kahn is a very important book if you want to understand how your own brain works and how to better control your thoughts, control your way of thinking. It helps you to understand what modes of thinking
Abby, come on.
media engenders, because an online life where you're just skating through hyperlinks
Water?
and reading
Here.
blurbs and reading memes and social media feeds is going to make you a very different thinker than if you're sitting quietly in a room reading a book.
Absolutely. You mentioned David Foster Wallace earlier. It's a very simple, small little thing. You can find it online. You can
I
find
got
it
another
at
one.
the bookseller. It's called This Is Water.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
nice.
It's
It's
a
good.
graduation.
I saw it.
There's no handles on the toy.
No, I know. She's okay with that. I'm okay with that. Where did that go? Chucked it.
We talked about when you're reading it together. Fascinating.
Do you want more
It's
water?
going to take many months to get through it, but it's worth it. And it'll definitely have better sensations. And Mike, you have a little David Foster Wallace. I don't think we talk very much audio-wise. It's always been like on chat rooms and stuff together. But you have that soft gentle quality.
I think they're going to the beach. That's kids.
It's right there. It's
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, it's probably because I'm sick. It sounds exactly
Thank God you're sick then.
Do you want more fries, Abby?
I'm actually feeling much better.
Do you want more to eat?
Feels me.
Awesome.
No?
Yes,
Got that round left heel.
Do you want a blanket?
that's right. Yeah, if anyone
Yeah?
is
There's a
interested
blanket.
in this kind of stuff, we can talk about it. I'm on Twitter. Cave Dweller with the last E is missing.
A little Play-Doh reference for us. All right, Mike. It's been an honor to talk to you. This is really cool that you're able to do this. And if you want
Your blanket's at home, Ab.
Your blanket's a home munchkin. Not here right now, okay, sweetie? It's okay, honey. It's okay. You can use this one. Use that one. Gimli Road. Makes sense.
And if you want to do this again, if there's a specific book that you want to tackle together around these issues or any other issues, I would be more than willing to do it. It's really fun to talk to you, and I hope our listeners get something out of it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much. Podcast before. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you soon.
I've driven by that dozens of times. I never noticed this is Wildwood Park. It's area in Winnipeg. My old stomping ground. Get to Winnipeg Beach. I just couldn't remember. I saw a backlog of traffic over there, and I was like, maybe it's that way. But I don't think so. Oh, yeah, it is.
What?
Yeah, I'm on the wrong side of the tracks. It's alright. I mean, we can get over there, I'm sure. But
we got the sweets in here, though. We don't have it here. I remember.
Oh, you want to go in there and check it out, or no?
No. We went there before, remember? And we don't have all stuff.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Got a bag of chips in the back.
Two.
It's a bag of chips.
I know, and I said there's actually two.
I meant to say bags of chips. But yeah.
That place says they have cold drinks. I guess you go in and get something then, and then I'll just have to take turns.
Doesn't matter.
Well, because I don't want to take that munchkin out.
Okay. I don't want ice cream. I just want something to drink, actually. But I know you want ice cream.
No, I don't.
You don't want ice cream?
Not even really, no.
No, I want a cold drink, not ice cream.
Like an iced tea or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when you said we're talking about ice cream, I'm like, oh, I don't really want my ice cream, but if Butt wants ice cream, it's okay, right? It's hilarious, but funny. That's funny.
Like other liberation, it's black liberation, gay liberation, women's liberation, the animal liberation is really
I can't remember if there's a
the ways in which other animals are
gas station that way. I don't think there is.
violated.
Why gas station?
That
Might have something cold.
So, Lori,
I honestly think this might be the best we can do, but I'm not even being funny.
both news media, but also really in
You don't think that they'll have
when
something?
it comes to animal rights activists,
we've actually edited a volume called Animalities that explores this very idea. And in it, you note that the pathologization of animal lovers and animal rights activists in a gendered manner, and how the quote-unquote madness of our relationships with animals intersects with the madness of taking animals seriously. This is a really fascinating concept. Can you just expand on this thesis a bit?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of interesting discussions amongst feminists about how to think about the animal rights movement, how to think about these questions, because
Like popsicle flavor ones. I just noticed that now.
Oh, you didn't even know what you were getting into?
Thinking more critically about what it is that you're supporting when you buy a animal body part.
I know, poor guy, eh?
Honestly, a silly place to have a dog there, but where else would you tie him?
Yeah.
Adam, the collaborator of mine, in a really important book called The Sexual Politics of Meat. And in The Sexual Politics of Meat, Adams actually identifies the way in which a particular conception of masculinity as dominant, as in control of nature, as in control of women, in control of animals.
Not kidding.
Yeah, put some in, some of them in the thing.
To keep that notion going. So it's an idea that has view of others as being subordinate. It's dominant view of masculinity. It's necessary to see others as subordinate, but at the same time consuming some of those others recapitulates the dominance. So it has a sort of it's
Well, you just spend a day out here, like Gimli if you want to. Winnipeg Beach is not far. And Winnipeg Beach is not that far. Now, literally, like you come here in the morning and spend the whole day.
Yeah, absolutely.
A particular cis masculinity, it's a heterosexual masculinity that is virile and assumes animal
Just really see the twist.
that controls.
Yeah, it should be, no?
Part of ideology.
But I figured some they're not any
That it can violate any of those norms.
I'm interested to try this one. It's clove flavor.
I
don't know.
I don't know. It smells like clove.
I don't even, what does clove smell like? I don't even know.
Like the spice of clove. Yeah, remember that smell?
So a lot of this is about.
It's like it doesn't smell.
She said it was popular in the 50s and they even had clove flavored lifesavers.
So that violate the norms that are part of their ideology, then challenging
It smells like cinnamon.
Yeah, because I feel like terms like toxic masculinity are applicable.
Well, I've had this flavor before, yeah. That's not bad.
It's like a cinnamon flavor.
It's,
Like it's considered the
like
highest
a, I don't know, it's like a mix of mint and cinnamon.
It's so interesting that you
Sure.
Not right.
so
I don't feel like having
sweets
like that.
very intense lately.
No, I didn't have the pop right
Cat
here.
Little, for example,
Orange vanilla.
Yeah, I know, eh?
I thought it was just orange.
Orange vanilla Coke Zero.
And the idea, unfortunately, is that empathy is thought to be simply sentimental. I think that the idea that reason and emotion are easily detached from one another, sentiment are not connected. That's critical.
Yeah, it seems like it's based on too much Star Trek.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
Probably gonna taste weird.
Can you give us some recommendations?
Oh yeah, still tastes good though. Mmm.
About noise from a left-leaning
Great.
Yeah, well, I've been in social services for decades, but I wrote a book called Tangled Empathy. It's meant to be really accessible, and it is a way of thinking quite differently about our relationships with other animals. And I think
This is
that's
the longer way?
Yeah, a little bit more scenic.
There's also really profound book that's a little bit.
I don't know if it's longer, it's just, it's slower, right? Because we're only going 50. I don't imagine it's much longer distance-wise. They have a barbecue right on the side of the street like that? Oh, garage sale.
Are thinking about race and challenges are thinking about consumerism and challenging that conceptual
Slap that in somebody's camper or a cabin or something.
Something, yeah.
That's actually an amazing segue into our next guest on this very episode, who is AFCO,
Oh, fantastic!
who co-wrote that book.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It has been so great to talk to Dr. Lori Gruen, William Griffin Professor of Philosophy and Professor of Feminist, Gender, and Sexuality Studies and Science and Society at Wesleyan University, where she also coordinates Wesleyan Animal
Where's
Studies.
Cameron?
Thanks so much for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
I don't know actually. I never went.
We are joined now by AFCO, decolonial theorist and independent digital media producer. She's the co-author of the book Afroism, Essays on Pop Culture, Feminism, and Black Veganism from Two Sisters. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, if we wanted to go back to the highway, we go that way, but
I'm beyond
I said we're just going for a nice drive.
So, we've been talking a lot about animal rights. Flashpoint. I want to start by quoting something you said in the New York Times in 2017, an article on black vegans in the United States. Where you said, quote, when you say that, a lot of people tend to
Well, it already had to be bobbing left and right,
just
but
reflect the recent landscape. For black vegans are it's one of the most diverse and complex ingredients. I want to start off with this quote. Can you kind of expound on what you mean by that and what you think the chasm is between the general public perception of veganism versus what veganism is in reality?
Absolutely, it's a great question. And before I even answer that, I want to say thank you for even hosting this conversation, despite the fact that some of you might not be vegan. I applaud you on that, especially because in our cultural imagination, we assume that in order to even talk about animals, you have to be vegan. And that's not necessarily true. In the same way that, like, I can gather really awesome insights from people who read meat and write books and stuff, you know, I don't have to eat meat to read it, right? Similarly, you don't have to be vegan at all to have this particular conversation on animals. Although I do ask for that.
Totally.
Can you reach the French fries?
I was really excited by that New York Times article. Actually shocked that they were writing it because black vegans really get no visibility in the mainstream conversation on veganism and animal rights. So I've only been vegan for probably
Just
about 5
want a couple
years.
of fries.
30 years old.
Get that taste out of my mouth before I have my
every
drink.
type of meat on the planet, okay? So I get it. But
It's an interesting
when
taste.
I went vegan, I remember one of the reasons, or one of the obstacles to even getting to that point was
smelling it doesn't interest me at all.
on top of that, vegans were framed as being really privileged.
Good with fries?
So many of us are struggling with human rights, our own racial struggles, and to see particularly white vegans in the mainstream media landscape, you know, running in front of buses and running in restaurants to fight for animals is silly. And it wasn't until I
Parties
went
going on or
vegan
something?
through
I guess,
a
eh?
racial route.
Yeah, I guess a lot of
that
people
started to
come out
realize
here for the
how
weekend or something.
amazing and
Yeah.
Camping or wherever
decolonial
in their
and
friend's place.
impressive
Saw there's
it really
tents in
is.
the back.
And so in
I don't know, my
veganism,
drink
they
for you.
oftentimes look at the very, very tip of the giant iceberg in animal rights activism. And PETA, which is People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, they're given the most
Checking it for poison?
and they're known for hosting really kind of intense spectacles or stunts involving sometimes like
Good.
sexualized
Interesting flavor, yeah.
imagery of women handing out vegan
Tastes
hot
more
dogs
vanilla
or
than the
something,
orange.
or, you know, staging really like
Yeah, I can taste the
sensitive
orange.
kind of
Oh, yeah.
protests that compare different racial oppression to animal oppression. For most people, even if you're not vegan, you
Almost
don't
like
care
you're
about animal
standing
rights,
taking a piss.
you know what PETA is, right? So
Yeah, I don't know what he was
it can
doing.
be a little awkward because I do know people who work at PETA who are like beautiful people, beautiful souls. They work their backs. What a lot of people in the public don't know is that a lot of vegans and animal rights activists also don't really like PETA and their campaign. Even sometimes people
That's
who
not
work
bad.
within the organization.
I'd get it again.
So let me give the public some credit here for a second because I don't necessarily judge people for
Yeah, no,
thinking
looks like
animal rights
these trains are
activists are good.
I think people used to have to, because
interaction.
Winnipeg Beach was obviously like a little tourist
I
town.
have also
So I think people used to have to take the train to get there, yeah.
However, I'm laughing for different reasons than a lot of people in the public. You know, a lot of people in the public are laughing because not only is the spectacle embarrassing, but they're laughing because they think animal rights is embarrassing.
Hopefully it's just
And I don't think animal rights is embarrassing at all.
Yeah.
And so when I got into the more like racialized aspects of the vegan movement, it really kind of upset me. This was around maybe 2014, 2015 when I wanted to like do something about it because I was only friends with vegans of color. And I kept hearing this narrative that vegans are white, veganism is a white thing. And I'm like, there's a reason why you know PETA, but you don't know Vegan Soul Fest, Black Veg Fest, Vegan Voices of Color, Sister Vegan, Black Vegans Rock. You know, there are tons of really amazing scholars and activists, who are fighting for human rights and simultaneously advocating for animal liberation, who get absolutely no screen time in this conversation. So that's what I meant when
there's
I
like
was being interviewed.
zero ethical arguments for why we should eat
Not necessarily the
animals.
mainstream movement that comes to your mind, but the movement that I'm in has some of the best.
The only one is it tastes good.
Read in my life, and I have been through many movements.
Which is a hard one to overcome. I can't even overcome it for myself, so I mean, I like to think I am a pretty morally scrupulous individual, but other than the occasional chicken sandwich, apparently.
If I would know more how to cook
So you
with
talk about, right, about
vegetables to make it
decolonization
taste
a lot.
delicious,
You really connect veganism
fruits,
with this deep,
you know.
complex decolonization.
It's expensive,
and,
and it
how they
requires
work together in
requires more effort for sure. I can't. No one can argue that. A lot of my friends are vegan.
Isn't really the end goal or the main point for me. Veganism is merely
Honestly, I've thought about it, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that like within the next 10 years, we're not even like just as a society, we're gonna stop eating animals. We're not gonna do it anymore.
We're different from what the mainstream.
Right.
Yeah, because they're gonna start growing. They're gonna start growing it in a.
Animals are so central to coloniality.
Yeah, I've never been that way.
Try it.
Let's
If it's
see
on
it.
gravel, no, don't go down, but
It looks like it's gravel from here, I think.
because it's not a proper
Yeah,
road.
whatever. Let's go walk onto the main road.
There's really this giant discomfort where people don't want to talk about it. And for me, as an activist, I love going to those sore spots. I love going to the place where it's the most tense, where everyone kind of clamps up and they're like, no, I don't want to talk about that. It's just expensive. And it's sometimes sad when I see people on the left politicize everything, but sometimes their place. They politicize everything, their bodies, their choices.
Yeah, what I was
They don't really
saying
think
is that
about
like we're just gonna grow our meat in a lab, or it's gonna be replaced with like better burgers, stuff that like tastes so close to meat that it doesn't even matter if it was grown from peas. Yeah, well, you'll see within the next 5 years it's gonna become mainstream. It's becoming mainstream now. Like we could go to next time when we go grocery shopping, I'll show you they have better they call it better burgers, I think, or impossible burgers, that are burgers that are made just from peas and soy and spices and I've had them and you can't even tell really. I went to A&W and I had the Impossible Burger there, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And then they're like, you can replace any patty with an Impossible patty if you want, right? And it's like a $2.50 charge or whatever.
Like a Big Mac, and you just throw the
Yeah, you just throw that in.
patties there.
Yeah, but it's obviously only at A&W.
Yeah,
Right. So a couple weeks later, I went there and I ordered a teen burger, but I want an Impossible teen burger, right? And they're like, sure, no problem. So they made it, and I ran out to catch the bus. And then when I was on the bus, I was eating it, and I was like, oh, they fucked up. They gave me a regular teen burger, right? And I ate it, and I was like, oh, well, whatever, no big deal. I mean, I lost $2. I paid for something I didn't get, but I mean, I'm not gonna go back. Like, I'm not gonna sweat it, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, then like an hour later, I had burps, and my burps weren't meat burps; they were vegetable burps. And I was like, I would have never known. I was like, wow, like, yeah, you can't even tell. Yeah, if you haven't had one, we'll have to go get one day. It is a little different. They don't quite have it perfect yet, but it's very hard to tell. And I mean, we're just like, it's still baby steps, right? We're still in like, it's still brand new technology, right? So give it another 5 years and they're gonna have it almost perfect.
And within that backpack are all the oppressions that he's carrying every single day, whether that's ableism, poverty, trans antagonism, whatever. And he feels the weight of this every single day. And then here comes animal
And then
rights
also,
activists that come
not only
along,
that, but they're also right on the edge of being able to,
they want to add to the backpack.
not only are they right on the edge of being able to make something that tastes and has the texture of meat and the smell of meat, and for all intents and purposes, you could give someone two and they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. One is from the flesh of a dead animal, and one is from plants. They're also going to be able to grow flesh in a lab, right? And it will have more perfect marbleization. It will have more, better tender, be more tender. It will be everything that a perfect piece of meat is now, for cheaper, and with none of the ethical concerns about like, wow, should we really kill a chicken?
The thing is that might be cheaper now, but once everybody starts buying it, they'll be like, you know what, we'll jack up the price.
No, it gets even. Well, I mean, yes, there might be some of that market manipulation, but the amount of labor investment that goes into making,
how it does on the environment and all that too, right?
Oh yeah, all
the
that.
transportation, the packing, the slaughtering, all of that, right? Like you said, the labor, right? Yeah.
All of that's going to factor in, and there's just way less labor that goes into growing plants than it does to raise it. The vast majority of our plants we actually grow to feed animals, and you know, and I listened to a podcast, and again the guy says like, well, why don't we just cut the middlemen out and use the plants to make animals, right? You'll see within the next 5-10 years, you won't. Within probably, I would say 15 years, the idea of going to a grocery store and buying a big juicy steak like we had the other day will be like, you just don't do it unless you're like super rich, right? It's, you know, it'll be like $300 for a steak like that or something like that. It's gonna get very expensive very fast. You'll see. I mean, how much were those steaks? I think those 2 steaks were $25 already. Like that's really pricey, yeah, right? It's okay,
honestly, but I paid more than that for 2 steaks. That's pretty cheap, bro.
No, I think they were on sale. I think those two steaks were like 22 something, $25. So I go to Harris because
it would at least been like maybe close to $50.
Oh, like in a restaurant or something? Oh yeah, absolutely.
And like even other butchers.
Yeah. If we just went to Safeway.
$45 maybe. $40, yeah. Those 2 steaks, yeah.
Did you eat the other half?
Oh yeah, that was for lunch. That's probably why I wasn't so hungry too, because I just had that steak and then I had that sandwich at Timmy's, right? And then I just drank a lot of water and I chowed down on the iced tea and the salad.
She has a book out called Race Matters, Animal Matters. Everyone should read it. And she actually has a quote where she says, African Americans are animal agents for the animal rights movement.
And my stomach, it's shrunk so much now, it just kind of needs to stretch up a bit more. Because I have to eat because this baby has to gain weight. I have to gain weight. Like I weighed myself in this morning and I was 71.6.
I always try to get people to understand the conceptual frameworks before changing their diet. Or else you're really going to think veganism.
I'm planning to put this video on, by the way.
Long-term changes. That has been seen as this.
Can't cut it.
Yeah.
Thing that you'd be rich to do.
Honestly, but sometimes it's being in the car, like you could talk about private stuff, personal stuff, because sometimes we don't have time at home, right? So when we're together in the car, it's really hard not to talk to you about stuff, right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't. It doesn't bother me. I don't think. Does it bother you?
I just don't want you to be posting everything online when we're driving everywhere.
No, I just like the road trips. To show like what it looks like.
Like road trips is that like when we're to BC, okay, that's fine, right? Like,
speaking about representations of,
but if we're going to Kenora, and you know, it's just me and you, and then Abby in the back, you know, right?
Yeah, like I would want to oppose that, no?
Yeah, but I don't want to feel like I cut back on talking about certain things, right?
Media tropes in terms of
I don't.
perceptions.
I don't know. I don't. I'm not. You don't. I'm not worried. Like, what are? You know, I don't think our issues are that really.
Animal rights activist who jumped on the stage with Kamala Harris.
I don't know.
Or was a part of like a panel talking.
I don't ever really feel like there's anything that we would talk about. I'm like, oh my god, if somebody heard this, I'd be so embarrassed. Like, I don't know. I never really thought about it so much, I guess.
Well, I like if we talk about like drivers and all that, right? Just a conversation.
I don't really gossip.
Yeah, but it's a point all the time, right? Like, just says that like, oh, I can't believe it, you know, like, they don't like my brother, you know, and all that.
I hate using the term ableist, but they're seen as crazy, they're seen as insane, and they're kind of seen as laughing stocks of our society. They're portrayed that way. They're given
given no nuance at all. And as a person who actually cares about animals,
I brought my temperature down.
Is it?
show how animal rights activism can be really multidimensional and effective. And to a certain extent, I have to say with my work, the goal of my work is never to combat the stereotype, because I don't think that's my job. In the same way, you know, if someone who eats meat does something ridiculous in the media, do you feel compelled to combat that? You know what I mean? Do you have to whip out a statement? No, I mean, that'd be silly.
As a meat eater, I condemn war criminals.
See, well, there you go. There you go. And for me, I don't really feel. I think I used to feel this urge or this compulsion to constantly come out and say something, to be like, no, we're not all like that. But I'm like, you know, there's no point, because to a certain extent, in PETA's defense, which we rarely ever will hear me doing, they have a right to do whatever they want. I mean, like, that's their activism, that's their organization, that's their brand. But unfortunately, in our cultural imagination, we conflate brand with movement, and we oftentimes conflate the raw oppression itself with movement designed to tackle that oppression. And that's why most people cannot separate animal rights from PETA. It's really, really unfortunate.
You said you had a book coming out. Do you want to tell us about that real quick and where people can find it?
Yeah, it's going to probably come out in 2 to 3 months from Lantern Books, and the title is Racism as Zoological Witchcraft, A Guide to Getting Out. And it's basically a media studies book that shows how racism is composed of anti-animal attitudes, and I use media shows to kind of tell my arguments. I specifically
That's
rely
an
on
interesting theory, yeah.
because I
Maybe we could combat racism from equating animal morality with human. Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Because it was one of the ways people are able to, you know, treat immigrants bad or whatever is that they dehumanize them, right? They say, well, those are rats, those are cockroaches or whatever, right? Well, so maybe so what if they are cockroaches? Like, cockroaches deserve the same respect that you would give a person. Like, maybe if we just change the zeitgeist that way.
Well,
That's interesting. I never even considered that.
We'll close this interview. AFCO, decolonial theorist,
I unsubscribed from this show because I didn't like one of the episodes, but maybe I should resubscribe to it.
Activism, essays on pop culture, feminism, and black veganism from two sisters. Has a new book coming out soon. Everyone should definitely check that out. Thank you so much again for joining us today on Citations Needed.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so a lot to digest there, not to make a terrible pun. I think it's one of those things where there'll be some types of episodes where we're not being too prescriptive about what we think it's good for talking about. I think the stereotypes and the gender nature of the discussion is super interesting to me, and one of the things it's interesting to Demon's job. So definitely check out the writings of these writers, check out the show notes, and I think there's a lot of things to look more into and think critically about. And I look forward to hearing all the comments. I'm sure they'll all
Well, yeah, I think one of the most
Video of me having that popsicle at
someone who is not
on my mom's birthday when we went over at mom's.
Oh yeah, upload it to the share group. Nabby.
Just how things
Oh
are
my gosh, it's
related.
literally the last video I did.
Well, by the essayist Carl Boggs. This is also referenced in Emily Atkins' great piece in the New Republic, which we spoke about earlier. And it's this quote: "Aside from the military, no sector of American society matches the frightening consequences of the meat complex. Ecological devastation, food deterioration, routinized violence, injury, disease, and death to both humans and animals, rampant corporate power." And so just seeing how everything fits together, I think, is not only vital to really bring into the, I don't want to be cheesy, but like the conversation about oppression, the conversation about racism, the conversation about violence, and it's just very worthwhile, and it's something that I think a lot about. It really gets back to that idea of feeling like you just want to justify this really shitty part of your lifestyle, even because you just feel like you're on the wrong side. My 8-year-old daughter is a self-driven vegetarian, and I was impressed by her determination to do that, despite the fact that no one else in the family is. And so I think that there's just a really strong sense of morality there that I find very important to consider.
You're morally weak. That's the thesis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Are you gonna upload those all?
And that will do it for this episode of Citations Needed. Thank you everyone for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Citations Pod, Facebook Citations Needed, supporter of our work, patreon.com/Citations Needed Podcast. Mr. Ozzy Matthew Johnson. And of course, as always, a very special shout out goes to our critic level supporters through Patreon. They include Aaron Durbin, Ethan Warshow, Alex Peterson, Lorenzo Mitchell, Eric Knight, Max Malay, Blake Bunell, Nigel Kirby, Chris Sarah, Joe Schmo, David Bentner, Robert Phillips, Andrew Meyer, Kyle Fritz, Ed Citron, Matthew Monahan, Chris Brown, Greg West, Scott Roth, Ty Emery, Pete Lord, Zachary Henson, Kyle Novak, Chris Vincent, Jonathan Jardy, Esther Pindola, Lucas Sharp, Adam Bojack, Lowell Bander, Chris Reese, Jimmy Snoop, Rob McDonough, Casey Lawler, Morgan Lee Hopkins, David Hannemeyer Hansen, Scott Benson, Clay Perry, Simon Barrett, BY, Tom Donnelly, David Aquaviva, Evan Keeler, Red
This is
Scare,
a day where I wasn't feeling myself at all.
Peter Scare,
That's the day before
I
I
am
got
Mr. Ozzy,
there. It was just like shit.
Citations needed is produced by Carl Adams. Production consultant is Josh Cross. Production assistant is Trent Viper. Research and newsletter by Marco Cardolano. Transcriptions are by Morgan Caslin. Special thanks to Dayton Martindale for his help on this episode. Music is by Greg Daddy. Thanks again for listening. Catch you next time.
She doesn't know the concept is that good. It's ball. She just looks at you like.
I asked her and asked if that's good. And she says yeah.
This next message is brought to you by Hotels.com. You know when you're endlessly scrolling social media and suddenly you see it? It's your friend Dylan in Hawaii on another vacation. What do? You hate like his photo and immediately go to Hotels.com to book a vacation so epic, so awesome, so sweet that your friends will hate
She
that
actually
your
kept
trip.
it.
Hotels.com. Be there, do that, get before you think.
Yeah, so I was in, must have been second grade when that moved homes. So we're in a new school, no kids with turbans had ever gone to the school before. Nobody had ever seen anyone with those. And so asked my teacher to use the bathroom. So I remember walking to the bathroom, getting to the boys' bathroom door. There were a couple of 5th grade kids standing outside who I didn't know. They kind of laughed and pushed me and said, "You have long hair under that thing." "You have long hair under that thing, so why don't you use the girls' bathroom?" And they pushed me towards the girls' bathroom. Okay. And they said, "Use the boys' bathroom when your hair is
Like,
and I remember actually that night.
oh my gosh, I'm just getting pissed off.
Okay. I don't remember those. That night I actually snuck a pair of scissors under my pillow, planning to cut my hair, which in our religious tradition, it's like, it's not acceptable. And so that was super traumatic for me.
My mom
as a kid.
needs a bit of a haircut. But
That's the first. That's actually one of my very first memories as a kid.
Simranjeet Singh was maybe 7 or 8 months out. He hasn't really thought about it since. He didn't actually get around to cutting his hair because he was waiting for his parents to fall asleep, and he accidentally passed out first. That's how young he was.
sometimes I don't even know when it
That
was on share
still showed the kind of man that he would
more
become.
more updates on the navigator.
Don't put it in the road trip though.
Cool-headed, self-made.
I noticed Nana's
Oh,
doing that.
shit.
Yeah, no, it's not a big deal. It's just it makes it easier to sort. That's all.
I am Ismail, and you're listening to Mayhem. On this show every week, we tell honest stories about our lives and investigate where we get our ideas about what it means to be human. So, I don't usually wear traditional garb, but a few weeks ago was I.
I'm just not going to post anything. I'm just going to post it on my just rather.
Yeah, no, you know.
So
I don't usually always say
again,
something.
it's this big white ankle-length garment with long sleeves that looks Middle Eastern and very warm. My family and I went to the zoo that day. The
Where
food
was
looked
this?
almost quite big.
At Costco.
I noticed the difference in how people saw it. At first,
Oh, I did post that
surprise,
video already. Can I take that off?
Sure.
caution
Yeah,
after
absolutely.
realizing we doing something disarming, laughing or smiling.
Yeah,
When I was a kid, never
How
done
can I
that.
do it? Just
I
trash
didn't want people
more?
to see me any different than they already did. So
Oh,
I
yeah,
tried
there
to
we go.
blend in. Simran didn't really have that choice though. He's sick, and that means he couldn't really hide. This message is brought to you by Hotels.com. So every day, thousands of people will book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like on social media. What's a hate like? It's when your friend Kyle posts an envy-worthy vacay photo and you like it, even though you kind of hate it. It's not that you hate Kyle, that you hate that he's on an awesome trip while you're sitting in the bathroom stall at work. Don't hate like Kyle's trip. Book your own on Hotels.com and get rewarded basically everywhere. Hotels.com. Be there. Get rewarded. So if you're like me, getting from point A to point B fast is annoying. In a place like New York, getting there sometimes means spending more time waiting in
So
traffic than
I
actually
asked David,
if you're sick of
as
waiting
to when
to
is he
get to
going
where
back
you're
to
going,
work,
let
he
Boosted take you.
says
Boosted's vehicle-grade electric
maybe
skateboards and
2
scooters
weeks.
are the modern solution to your
Second week in
transportation
July.
troubles.
But
You've got a
apparently
22-mile
he'll have to
range
move
with
it
max
more
speeds of
further
like 24 miles
because
an hour.
they got
Nice
some
mindful of
equipment
running to the
there
store
and they were
traveling
damaged,
across town.
so
They've got
they'll
5
have to order
options to
some
pick
more.
from, including their new scooter
So-
and Boosted Rev.
Sorry, who are you talking about? David from work?
No, Heather's David.
Oh, sorry.
So there's no better time than now.
I don't know why I didn't put it together, sorry.
Boosted is offering our listeners
And he
$75
says
off.
it might interfere, they might have to start back in around August.
Go to boostedboards.com.
And he said it might interfere with their trip, so he talked to Heather about it and said, is it okay if we ended up postponing our trip, putting it a little bit later? And she's like, if we have to, we have to, right? What can we do, right? So,
Honestly, and I should tell Heather this, unless you absolutely have to, going on vacation in the summer sucks. Because everyone's families is always on vacation. Everything is busier.
well, they're going at end of July and then August.
Yeah, and
that's
right,
true,
and
yeah.
all the kids are out of school, so you have to deal with that. So if you can go in September, right, or like we do usually in June, that's way better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not as crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's still really nice, mostly in September, right?
It definitely gave me this feeling that what I was doing, the way that I looked, the way that I lived, and
Oh, for sure. Like,
and then
it might not be as warm as, it'll still be nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
In San Antonio, Texas, separated brothers stood out. They all wore turbans.
Yeah.
A lot of this neighborhood had never seen one before except on the news. Never mind that he was sick, not Muslim. He was a brown
Pardon me.
man in an unfamiliar religion, and they expected him to prove their ideas wrong. That can be a lot of responsibility, especially
Munchie?
kids who still
Yeah, it's like
insecure about the
she
way
just
they
moved her head straight.
Trying to get a comfy spot.
She probably just got startled from us calling.
Smile at people that just use my longer, comfortable where I was and quite so I always try to balance my face and try to be like a friend.
You're a great mom, you know that?
Did you do anything like that?
I definitely so culturally in Texas, like in San Antonio,
It might be a little
if
chilly.
you don't say hi to everyone, you pass by on the street. And so like I always said hi to everyone, always smile. But everyone.
That's not what I was
someone
hunting
like,
for. I just
I
felt
know.
like saying that.
I know.
I need to present myself as a model.
You're a great
I think. We're a good team,
Yeah,
I think.
exactly. But there
Oh,
are
yeah,
things that
sure.
that I am thoughtful about, right?
That's a
So
piece of
think
metal
about
there.
this coming from
Where?
the perspective of someone like myself.
Just as the
Walk
yellow
around,
line
everyone's already,
started to split.
skeptical of you.
I didn't know much
Then you
about
go
it
through a
over
course of
or
training,
did I?
you get pulled
No,
aside,
no.
And I didn't
for
see anything.
a secondary
If you
screen,
would've
right?
hit
Like
it, I
the
don't think
standard
it would've been good.
profiling practice. And this is like part of the policy, right? So it's every single time.
Yeah, sometimes you get brought
Just
to
look at those short colors on
I
it.
call it that because you're sitting there waiting for your name to be called. Just Muhammad. Muhammad.
That's hilarious.
Muhammad. So brutal.
Yeah. Then everyone's looking at you, right? And they're like, oh, if those guys are scared of, if the government's just scared of these guys, then I should probably be worried about them too. Then you get to the gate, and everyone's like, oh, damn, that guy's on my flight. I don't want to sit next to him. Then you get on the airplane, and everyone's like, oh shit, like, this is real. And so I'm thoughtful about that, and like, when
Did I good now?
when I'm with my girls now, I find it's totally different, right? When they're 2 little babies, and people are like, oh, that guy might be a real human, right? But if I'm not,
He's on your nose, yeah.
when I'm not with my girls, like sometimes I'm thoughtful now. Like, should I speak in Punjabi or English if I'm on the phone, or should I like hear something like if I have my headphones in? People like treat me very differently than if I don't. Because if I have my headphones in, they're like, oh, that guy's probably a modern, normal person. Like they hear that I don't have an accent, they're less worried. But then again, I find that all those things to be a compromise for myself because of why am I changing who I am to make these people feel comfortable and they should be accepted me for who I am. So it's one of those things where no matter what I do, I'm like, man, I wish I didn't have to do this. I think that's the result.
I could get something for tomorrow, for either for lunch or for supper, but for my parents,
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
so they don't have to provide us for going for ages. At least we can get something.
That's why some people are so exposed to it's like
I'll talk to them and see what the plan is. Oh yeah, I wanted to send it.
I think
Those
like
videos
those
of,
moments, those explosions,
to
being
send that
reminded that you were different.
video to my parents.
It takes me some time to
This.
oh, I'm messing with it. This is a xenophobic thing, or oh, this is racist, or oh, it just kind of happens. And that's like, wait, is that racist?
Yeah, my brothers and I had this really funny conversation recently. I mean, funny but sad too. We went to a public high school just outside of San Antonio, and one of my brothers said, "Hey, am I remembering this wrong? Do you remember Confederate flags on the backs of pickup trucks in our school?" And all of us sort of like paused for a second. Like, yeah, like there were a lot of those, and like it didn't strike us as weird when we were kids, but like it's totally weird. I mean, like a lot of my childhood I see as normal. Like my brothers and I saw ourselves as normal. We didn't really think too much about it, and then like things would come up, right? Like maybe I remember this was also related to me. I don't know.
No, what does that?
A minute and 9 seconds for an email.
That's right. We're kids, so like we don't know. We're upset. It doesn't seem right. So like those kinds of things happen, and they form an impression on you. But it's not like that moment was so seared into my consciousness that like everywhere I went, I was looking for some sort of bigotry or discrimination or something. So it's like it's this funny existence where like you only know what's normal to you. Marginalization in general, like that just it weighs on you, and it really can take its toll over time. But one of the things that I draw from my tradition as a Sikh is this idea of we call charity Nicola, like always finding optimism in everything. And I think the power of that really, right? Like it is sort of somewhat forced. There's bad stuff happening all the time and painful stuff that you have to deal with. But being able to find hope doesn't just mean that you are deluding yourself into some false reality. It also means that you are then giving yourself a direction to go and shaping yourself as a person, right? What kind of person you want to be. How do you grow into it despite all the mystical sense of everything that to me is the power of that idea.
That's amazing. How does that influence your masculine?
If you want some of mine, you can.
Let me say this, like my experiences as a Sikh man have really pushed me to lean into the idea of charity club. And I'll explain what I mean by that. You know, in our
Does it
tradition,
always go by the volume, or it stays that one tone?
theologically clear, ideologically clear. Like every Sikh will accept that.
I think it stays at that volume because there's a thing in here where you can set how loud you
want.
want it.
Ways in which that doesn't play out.
And I turned it down that time you were trying to sleep,
One of the ways,
and it still was kind of loud, so I turned it off. And then I think I turned it back up. I can't remember.
We're determined. Women have the option to, you know, as commonly. And then because of our facial.
But yeah, I don't think it's
like,
attached to the
really
volume of the
stick
radio.
out as men.
That's what you're asking?
And you know, the kind of things that you and I have been alluding to, where this
I didn't think so either.
appearance of having brown skin, facial hair, turban, like it just puts us into this category, not just being visible, but looking like who most Americans perceive to be the enemy. And so it's been this like
tired.
weird thing about
Yeah,
Sikh
holy
masculinity
shit,
being
ever.
that we then become targets in our day-to-day lives, and then have to figure out how to deal with that. And for some people, it's
That's fine, but
Yeah, I know,
it's
I
not worth
just
it.
didn't realize.
They say I'd rather not work here than not have a beer. And for me, the way that I've tried to manage this issue has been
No, it's
to
67.
figure out what values
I'll
this
never
idea of
forget the
charity
joke
club
that
is talking
Heidi said
about.
for me the
Through
other
this lens of optimism.
To 420
What values
or
can I
whatever.
Yeah.
from my tradition that can then help navigate this sort of hate and bigotry that I encounter in our community deals with.
When I think about my personal masculinity and how I handle insults, I usually feel like I want justice. Rarely do I ever act on that feeling,
Yeah.
but I want to feel satisfied knowing that the person who crossed the line and hurt me, just hurt themselves, not physically, but like maybe I feel a bit emasculated by it. I feel as though I wasn't able to protect myself, and I worry that might happen a lot for people who are the victim of verbal abuse. And I worry that might have an impact on some kids' masculinity.
Yeah. So my main office is at NYU, and one of my favorite ways of commuting home is running along the river and back to my apartment. And running.
Yeah, something's not right.
And I have my headphones in, and I hear this guy shouting, and he's yelling racial slurs, calling me Osama. And typically, when somebody yells at me, I just sort of ignore it, especially if I'm working out. Like, I'd rather just get running. But I turn back, and I see he's a young kid, probably like 18, 20. If I was to just sort of see this from the lens of victimization, I would just sort of see it as, well, this guy's another bigot. He hates me because of how I look. Like, my life sucks. Right? Which is a very common and understandable way of responding to the stuff when you're just dealing with toxicity all the time. But because of this idea of looking for the silver lining or looking for hope, I decided to go talk to him. And it was a good conversation. Like, I talked to him about why I left this messed up. And really, I think what he said to me at the end of it, he said, I was just joking, I didn't mean it. Me and my friends just thought it was funny. And I think just like we see with young people and other people, like, just try to be funny and you say things that cross the line sometimes. And so I think what came out of that situation, and not every situation ends up like this, right? But what comes out of that is then you have 3 or 4 kids who are there together, and they walk away being like, all right, I understand why that was messed up, and I don't want to do that again. So, yeah, that's probably my best story, my best outcome, so that's why I shared that one. So in those situations, they're not personal at all. Like, they're not about me. Like, these people are mad at someone else. They have no idea who I am. They don't know anything about me. And so it's actually quite easy once you figure out how to deal with something like that, to not take it personally, and therefore not feel emasculated, right? Like, this is not my problem, this is their problem. And it's my problem in the sense that I recognize that this sort of mentality could lead to harm or violence for others, and that's where I want to step in and really get into the educational piece. But in those situations,
I've never gone north on Henderson from here.
Last year, I was on Park Avenue.
Yeah, it doesn't like me.
I'd like
It will when we get home, I'm sure.
It says it's over 100.
Guys that come at a certain time.
Oh, for you trying to email it?
This guy on the
I'll see the 40. I'll see the 42 one.
Had to be like some kind of dark liquor on his breath. He said, "Hey, if any of your cousins back home ever want to blow up
You've
this
never
city,
went on the Henderson?
I'm gonna put a gun."
No,
to
I've
your
gone
head."
south on, which is obviously the way I'm going to go right now. I've gone south on Henderson, but I've never gone
I was
north
thinking
on
in my head,
Henderson, like up to
this
East Selkirk.
motherfucker, like, this is crazy. I was
Oh,
like,
is that where I go
about
right now?
to do something.
Oh,
just
no,
the fact that
that's
it
away from
happened.
home. But
I was kinda
Henderson keeps going that way,
sort
right?
of like drinking all that in, and I looked him right in the
This
eye. and I
attachment
was
may be
like,
too large to send
what?
email
Like,
to
I
want to
couldn't.
mail
I
job.
had
To
words.
to
And his
deliver
friend
the
came from
attachment
behind
using
him and was like, "Oh,
iCloud.
she's drunk. They must have been drinking."
Yeah, you can do that.
Drop
Drop or whatever it is.
Use mail drop.
Mail drop, yeah.
Disappeared into the crowd.
It's so much easier, honestly, if you're
And I was
when your
left
parents had an
humiliated.
iPhone. I don't know why. Where did they get a Windows phone?
Poorly of myself, like, kind of almost.
We should give them one
They
of our
pay
old
like
iPhones.
50
It
bucks
didn't
a
have
month
me
or
thinking
whatever
about
for their
politics or
phones.
locations. At that point, it just kind of felt like, yo, this is my city. I was born like 3 miles from here, just in Jersey City, and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, like, this sucks.
Pardon me.
I felt shitty. I felt like shit here.
Yeah. I mean, let me just first let you know that I'm with you. Like, I've been in that same spot, like, over and over again. So that story I told about
Your dad?
who I talked to while running.
He sells swimming pools.
walked away with a good outcome.
Okay.
What I didn't tell you
I
was
guess maybe it
less
says
than a
it's
week before
just
that.
selling swimming pools.
Right
Yeah,
outside
that's
two
exactly what it
blocks
says.
from
It says Sam Cavella or whatever.
Since what?
Selling
1980?
swimming pools for
I've been
30
dealing with
years
this
or
stuff my whole
something
life,
silly
right?
like that.
I should have
1980,
known what
there
to
you
say.
go.
But I
It's
had
pretty
no
right,
idea.
just
Like,
looking
I
at a
froze,
photo
I
like
totally
that.
Yeah, that was
Pregnant.
really weird.
that same sort of feeling. Like I was totally ashamed of myself. Like so much so that I like couldn't sleep that night, and then I ended up posting on Facebook and Twitter. Like I just put a message out there being like, "Hey, this happened. What do you think I should have done?" And
Holy.
it was really like
My gosh.
I spent the night thinking to myself
I've
what I
never
wish
wanted
I
that
would have
house
done, and I
before.
couldn't come up with
Really?
whatever.
Yeah.
I
What
mean,
the right
not that I
answer was.
particularly noticed houses here, but I'm surprised you
Constantly,
would
where we have to somehow
be able to say that you...
deal with someone's anger
Exactly, but
and
he's
hatred
living...
for something that has
It is
nothing
what
to
it
do
is
with
there,
us.
still.
But it's
I haven't talked to either of them in a
so
while.
how do you deal with that? I don't know.
I kind of think that if people opted to do that, maybe like, oh, nice,
Part
nice,
of
but
it is just
relationships are hanging
preparing
on like that. I
yourselves,
think
right?
it kind of
Knowing
just not
what
there
kinds of
anymore.
situations
Yeah.
and then being ready, and then I mean that to me is the
Like the
opposite.
funny looking
That's-
gate?
right? Like that to me was really
Mhm.
empowering.
Is that the funny looking gate?
Have this conversation. Like,
I don't remember which one
I
it
can't
is.
turn this.
I know which one it is. They'll have the funky looking gate and it'll be right on that side.
As a journalist, I
Like,
have these
literally
kinds of
just as soon
conversations
as it
all
passes,
the
it's right
time.
there.
Some of you listening right now might know me from my video series, Who's Afraid of Aiming to
It's
Smite?
like a black and
It
gold.
let me have those conversations on my terms, and he's right, it was really empowering. But you can't expect anyone and everyone to want to. But Simran has chosen
So,
to
is
embrace
it
this
Enola
mantle.
or Enola or that your
The
friends?
thing about being sick is that I
Oh, no,
made a
no.
conscious decision to read
It's about 3 hours away.
Oh,
It's near Riding Mountain.
That's been true
Okay.
since
It'd be nice to go up there.
I've never heard of that place before.
I don't think I think I'd heard of it, but only because
in retrospect,
of working a Purolator.
transformative.
I didn't even know she moved.
When you
Why did she
learn
move
to
there?
embrace
Why? She one of her dreams is she always wanted to own a food cart. She always talks about it. And I guess her and her partner decided to move there. If I remember correctly, she was definitely working in the automotive industry, and I think he was too.
I think from my own experience,
Riding Mountain, it's like south.
being able to just
No, it's up
a difference for the rules.
northwest.
It made it a lot easier for me to
Northwest.
not give in to some of what I think would be
So I just don't
otherwise
remember where Riding
really
Mountain is.
negative
It's like,
ways
yeah,
of
I've heard of it.
which would be like
I know where I have tasted this before. They have candles at Christmas
Any
that
of those
smell like
things.
clove.
I would say that so much of what I learned through my experiences and the way in
My
which
mom
I
always burned clove flavored candles. That is where
it's very tempting. So it's right, like I talk about love all the time. I'm like a brown skinned, bearded turban man who like
Interesting.
people probably aren't expecting to talk about love, but that for me has been only possible because I don't really care what people think. Right? And I mean I do, like I care what people think, but I don't actually feel like I need to live into a certain model of what it means to be a certain way within this world. Right? Like it's easy for
this
me
is
to
where
reject that.
Vanessa lived up here somewhere. I don't know where, but I know
I
she's
never
from
really
Maryland.
lived that way before. I chose it. It's been a conscious decision to be different. And I think that, yeah, that's been the big thing. And that for me has been, realizing the power of that experience, and the power of what that can do has then become the impetus for my idea of how this world can change. And so it's not, I wouldn't say that it's an exclusively sick message or in particular to my sick experience. I think these are universal takeaways that can come through all sorts of case studies, communities, experiences, people. And that's sort of how I thought about education. Like everything I do, whether it's writing columns and articles or showing up on TV or being in the classroom or working on civil rights cases, like it all goes back to the core piece of education. Like how do we bring these values to bear in our society, which needs them so badly? I think that's to me is the big question mark.
I've dealt with
flavor,
religious and racial harassment for what feels like my entire life. When it happens, I brush it off and try not to think about it. I don't want to think that I can't handle it, so most times I don't even try to. But now, I think that approach might stop me from feeling
A lot for sale. I wonder if Heather
and I end
David
up
will
carrying it around with me like grief.
build their house from scratch.
In a lot of ways, it shaped the man that I am today. Because I've never digested what I've gone through, discussing it with someone who has, like
So you do want to live in this area,
felt
right?
really good. By verbalizing it, it became
See that gates?
He doesn't take it personal.
Okay, so it's right here somewhere. There it is there.
Yeah.
Instead of
That's all I
internalizing
remember.
it, someone is showing me how
Funny
to
looking
find the
gate.
optimism and some
Good
semblance of
memory book.
control.
I never would remember
That
that.
feels like a good place to start.
One of our first, like,
Man Up
not
is hosted in
dates, like, we were obviously going out by then, but, you know.
Producers like
Yeah,
him,
we went to our New Year's on that
our
over
executive
there, right?
producers,
Well, we even went over to their place for dinner one time before that. That was our first New Year's together, I think, wasn't it?
Thomas is the senior
Yeah.
managing producer of the Slate podcast.
But we started going out,
TJ
like,
Raphael is the senior producer of the Slate podcast.
in say August, September we started talking, I think. August we started talking, and then
and offer suggestions. Is there a conversation you think we should be
We
having?
figured out a
Let us know.
date, right?
Please
It
leave
was
us
the
a
end of
review at
September.
I thought we changed it because it was always the same weekend as Thanksgiving.
And then we looked at the movie tickets, and we changed it in end of September, I think it was.
We moved it forward. I have it saved on the phone. Honestly, and I don't get upset, but I don't remember. Just another date to me, really.
Not end of September. Most severe weather
I'm Mark
warnings.
Murphy. I'm a chef, restaurateur,
Rain?
and host
From
of a
where?
new podcast from iHeartRadio called Food 360.
Valhalla.
Join me as we
Supposed to
take
be
a
power.
360-degree look at
It's supposed to
history,
be raining right
science,
now. Oh, no.
culture,
It's
and
12
more,
p.m.
all through the lens of food.
The
Alert.
most important thing for me is not
That
my
was from
writing
12
ego.
p.m.
It's getting people to cook delicious food.
Be sure to subscribe
Conditions
to
is
Food
favorable for
360
development
on
of
the
dangerous
iHeartRadio
thundershowers
app, Apple
that may be
Podcasts,
capable of
or
producing
wherever
damage,
you listen to
winds,
your
gusts,
favorite
damaging
shows.
hail, and torrential rain. When are they predicting this?
Sleepwalkers is a production of
Thundershowers.
iHeartRadio and Unusual Productions.
What the heck? It said severe thundershowers, and
I
the one
was
thing
on
is
a patrol
tomorrow,
up in the mountains of
tonight,
Afghanistan.
at
And I was
midnight,
doing
it's supposed to be
reconnaissance
thundershowers,
with a
but
very
it
small
doesn't.
team. And I
Mostly
saw
cloudy with
someone
thunderstorms.
approaching this young man, maybe early 20s.
That's Paul Shari, a former Army Ranger, an elite special operative in the US military.
There were sort of a couple possibilities that came into my mind. One was that he was a goat herder, just out taking his goats to eat some grass. Another
Well,
was
does
that
they
he
snore? Oh,
might
no,
be like
no, I
a
won't.
woodcutter that's protecting his property. And another one might be that he was someone who had seen us. There wasn't a lot of vegetation in the area, so we were pretty exposed. And he was coming to kill us.
We're gonna
And
be on
those
the
all
laptop,
seemed
but
like very
back
real
to my brother.
possibilities.
Yes, we can,
You
yeah.
have similar
I'm tired of
situations
seeing
where
it on the
enemy
table.
fighters pretended to be
It's just
civilians.
bulky. I wanted to move it last time. I'm like, oh, fuck, this thing's heavy. What the hell?
I had fairly high degree of confidence that, if we got into a gunfight,
My
we
dad
could
says
outmatch
I had to
him,
update
three of us.
it. He had to do
But if he
everything
supplies
to it
this,
because he
might be
hasn't
some
used it in a
joke
very long time.
Yeah.
So I wanted to maneuver to a position where I could see him, and I found him. He was sitting on the edge of a cliff and looking out over this high valley, and he had his back to me. And I settled into a
My
position
parents
where I
had the
could
tape
watch him
already,
very
so
closely through my sniper rifle. Close enough that the wind carried his voice towards me, and I could hear him talking.
So
That alarmed me because I could
the
see who was
weekend that we're
talking to.
going for a bonfire at Candace and Kevin's, it's actually Candace's weekend, his birthday weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, her birthday, I think it's on the 6th or the 7th or something like that. Just a heads up, I
So we should
noticed.
get her a little something.
Yeah, I just noticed it on the calendar. I'm like, oh, it's Candace's birthday weekend.
Yeah, nothing too wild, just, $20 or something. But
Yeah.
we'll go try and get something this week.
Yeah, awesome.
Paul didn't speak the local Afghan languages, Dari
We should
or
take
Pashto,
turns
so he couldn't
when they
understand.
do it over at their place. Like, they provided us this hot dogs and stuff, and then somebody else should do the hot dogs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Doesn't sound like a bad idea. And then
No.
they're planning on doing it again. Somebody else will do that to bring it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair.
Man was saying,
I thought he might have had a radio. He could be reporting back to maybe a group of fighters nearby. I was weighing that possibility versus maybe he's just, talking to himself or talking to his goats or something. And then eventually, I heard him start singing. And it struck me that if he was singing out over the radio to someone in our position, it seemed like a very strange thing for a fighter to be doing. And the most likely explanation was he was just an innocent goat herder, had no idea that we were there, and he was singing to himself just to pass the time.
And so Paul lowered his sniper rifle and he left. No provocation, no harm done to either side.
But that incident really stuck with me because there was a period of time where I didn't know whether he was, an innocent person or a fighter who might have been trying to kill us. And the actions I would take were very different in those two worlds. And now I look back when I think about autonomous weapons, and I think, what would a machine do? How could a machine understand the context that I did and sort of realize it doesn't make sense that a person might be singing in a tactical way? That seems strange. He's probably just an innocent person. Would a machine be able to do that?
It's a profound question Paul poses. What happens when something like a predator drone has as much autonomy as a self-driving car?
It better not.
And can an AI system ever understand context, which can sometimes mean the difference between life and death? In this episode, we'll examine AI on the battlefield and the future of technology-driven warfare. I'm Osvaldo.
If they ever give machines the ability to decide whether they should kill someone, we're gonna have to go to war. I think I'll have to start. I don't know. We can't have that. We just can't have that.
Last episode we talked about the future of work, and we focused on one big question, which was what can AI not do? And what Paul is talking about, identifying whether someone's a shepherd or an insurgent, identifying targets on the battlefield, seems to be one of those things.
Oh, they're working.
But on the
on
other
it. They
hand,
probably
it's
could do
important for us to
it.
ask,
They probably could do it right now if they wanted, but they might. I don't know. But the ethical issues are
good at seeing patterns. So it makes me think, that with enough training data about battlefield interactions, it could get just as good or better than humans at this task.
Yeah, and of course we don't have the counterfactual to Paul's story. Sadly, there's probably many stories where the army ranger doesn't wait to hear the shepherd sing before deciding what to do and just pulls the trigger. And equally, there's probably many sad cases where it does turn out to be an insurgent and an ambush happens to the soldiers. So just from that story, it's not necessarily clear to me that humans are always or will always be better than algorithms at identifying targets.
I do think it raises an important question. We are increasingly comfortable outsourcing many parts of our lives to technology. Who are we going to fall in love with? How are we going to get to our cousin's house? That's decision making though. In the world of war, we can also build tools to do things that people don't want to do. A lot of people have heard about Boston Dynamics. They have this extremely terrifying video of this four-legged robo-dog, aptly named Spot, that can run across bumpy ground. It can go into places that aren't safe for human beings, and they've just announced this model with a claw on the back of it that can open doors.
There are so many potential uses for this, from assisting military raids to sending Spot into buildings that are unsafe for humans.
Yeah, like a whole pack of Spots can actually pull a truck. There's a video of it online, look it up, it's frightening.
Teamwork is the dream.
Look at those mushroom clouds over there, right? What's going to happen when that comes to the world of war? We have packs of robo-dogs.
Well, who knows, right? The future is unclear, and that's really the question of this episode. How will AI and robotics change the battlefield? And how good of an insurance policy is it to keep a human in the loop, to have somebody, a person, controlling a pack of Spots? We heard from Paul Shari at the beginning. He's now the Director of Technology and National Security at a bipartisan think tank called the Center for a New American Security. He's recently written a book called Army of None, Autonomous Weapons and the Future of War.
We're moving to a world where machines may be making some of the most important decisions on the battlefield about who lives and dies.
And as Paul's experience in Afghanistan,
they won't leave them on the battlefield. That's a problem. They'll just unleash them on us and be like, well, you better follow the rules.
Understandably, there's a great worry in handing over
and if you walk up and start smashing the machines, they'll just kill you. And they'll say, don't assault a police officer.
And as Paul tells us,
it's fucking terrifying what they would do.
And sold around the world.
The best example today of a fully autonomous weapon is a drone built by Israel called the Harpy 2. And it's been sold to a number of countries, Turkey, India, China, and South Korea. It's an anti-radar weapon that is flying a search pattern in the sky.
It'll be okay.
Oh my gosh.
And when it finds one, it can
lasts a
the
little
layer
while
with
better
any
outside,
further human
you know,
and
instead
that
of having the
crosses the
sun
line
blasting on my hair. The thing
an
about it, my
autonomous
head is
weapon
dark
that's
hair,
able to
right?
go
So
find
that
targets and
attracts
attack them
heat,
all by
right?
itself.
These are not the autonomous killer robots of science fiction,
Does
setting
the
their own
cat fit
goals
you better on
and
your head
human
now?
will. We still send
No,
them into
I know,
battle
it's too
and tell them
bad.
what to look for, but we no longer control exactly what they do when they get there.
So by analogy, you might think about a self-driving
It's
car.
amazing how many boats
There are
go
various
by.
degrees of how much
Just
a
that
car
one
can be
day, we must have
self-driving.
seen like
You
50
could have some,
boats
like
on
the
the river
Tesla autopilot
going
today, where there's a
But
steering
it's
wheel,
crazy.
and the human could intervene and grab control of the
a couple canoes.
You might have some, like, Google self-driving car that has no steering wheel, and the person just
So I
merely a
guess I'm just tired
passenger.
of people coming
But
in.
even in a totally self-driving car, the human is still choosing the destination. You're not getting in your car and just saying, car, take me where you want to go. So at some level, humans are always involved, and that's going to be the case in warfare. The question is, when do we cross the threshold where the humans have transferred control of some important and meaningful decisions to machines? And then what are the legal or ethical implications of that?
It is a hugely important question. In the aftermath of the Second World War, 196 countries signed up to the Geneva Convention, setting standards for behavior in battle. But how do we enforce those standards if the combatants are machines, not people? Beyond having a human in the loop, one important piece of the puzzle is a healthy testing and review process, a clear understanding of how a weapon works and the decisions it will make. But according to Richard Danzig, a former Secretary of the Navy, that's easier said than done.
One of the things that concerns me is that the technologies are frequently highly classified. So if for self-driving cars, we typically require that there be millions of miles driven, and we insist that external regulators review them for safety. In the military context, we don't have millions of miles of experience before combat, and we don't typically have any kind of third-party review that says, wait a minute, here are the risks associated with this system spinning out of control. We ought to be using teams to say, hey, what could go wrong if an adversary wants to attack these and subvert them, or when they interact with other systems.
The warning left, so
This kind of wargaming
Narlow
is
are
valuable,
predicting intelligence
but
after
the best laid
showers.
plans and standards can crumble in the face of existential threats,
Oh,
real
no.
or perceived. You only need to
Supposed to
think
start
about
thunder showers
Hiroshima
tonight.
and Nagasaki
But
to
it's not that
understand how
warning
quickly
anymore.
restraint can give way to the desire for victory.
Yeah, around
Here's
9 o'clock
Paul
they're
again.
predicting thunder showers.
As countries feel that their national survival might be at stake, they're going to be willing to take more risk, put out more experimental weapons. The use of poison gas in World War I is, I think, a terrible example of this happening in practice. Germany was in a panic to find some kind of wonder weapon that might break that stalemate. So a desire to get an upper hand will clearly, historically we've seen, lead militaries to take risks and deploy more
The
experimental
atomic
technology.
bomb. Another perfect
This is one of
example.
the scariest things about war to me, Kara, particularly war involving new technology, the potential for misunderstanding and unintended consequences. Paul mentions the almost accidental use of poison gas in World War
So
I.
you get the key from Derek.
And then there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we almost stumbled into a nuclear war.
And all this potential for misunderstanding is compounded exponentially in the world of AI. Because it's not just humans who are trying to read each other and make decisions, it's algorithms sort of loose in the wild, interacting
water.
with one another. The Guardian
Yeah.
actually had a great story about this called
Like
Franken
the sun
algorithms,
peeking,
the deadly
shining through
consequences of
onto the
unpredictable
water.
code. And the article makes the point that the stock market flash crash of 2010 was actually caused by algorithms interacting with one another. You know, it's hard not to think this could happen in the wild, so to speak.
It's a scary thought, and it's made even scarier because there's just so much potential all around for misunderstanding. And that's something Richard Danzig is seriously concerned about.
When we talk about sending a ship on a mission, policymakers by and large understand
So
what
why are they
that
building
means
this belt?
and
Why are they
how
building
others will
See, look,
perceive it if
there's
the ship
the,
comes into
not
the
scaffold, but the frame.
Whereas when we start talking
Yeah,
about
that wasn't even there the other day when I
artificial
walked by.
policymakers, if there are
station?
five
I don't think
people
so. It looks like more like a
readily
strip
envision
mall
five
kind of a
different
thing.
We need the people making decisions to understand both the situations they're dealing with and also how the tools they're using actually work. And that's not easy when it comes to AI. Part of the issue is the so-called black box problem. Currently, we understand the principle of how neural network uses probabilities to reach a conclusion, but we can't interrogate the millions of micro-decisions it makes along the way. This is a huge barrier to understanding weapon systems powered by AI.
We'll find out, I'm sure.
I wanted to know how the researchers developing new military technology think about the black box problem. So I spoke with Arthi Pravakar, the former head of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research
I went there for
and Arthi shared
a buffet when I was working at Freight.
Plays out.
And they called me when I had the afternoon shift, and they called me to come in early, and I worked my shift, and then I went home at like 10 o'clock, and then I was waiting for Pizza Hut to open at 11 so I could get all-you-can-eat pizza buffet.
And it would get 1 right, and it would get 10 right, and it would get 100 right, and then there was a picture that every human being would say that's a baby holding an electric toothbrush. But the machine said it's a small boy holding a baseball bat. And you know, you just look at it and you think, well, what? What were you thinking? And I think it's a great illustration of the black box nature of these learning systems.
First moved
because
to
they've been trained on all this volume of data. But when you look inside, you say, well, what went wrong there? You know, you just see a bunch of nodes and weights being trained, and so they're really opaque.
We just met up with your mom there
example is kind of cute.
For some reason, yeah.
But think about it for a moment. The difference between a baby holding an electric toothbrush and a small boy holding a baseball bat could also be, in Afghanistan, the difference between Paul Shepherd and a militant. In other words, the difference between life and death.
Yeah, and it's a bit daunting that we are becoming more reliant on something that we continue not to understand fully, don't you think?
Absolutely, and Henry Kissinger actually wrote a piece on this for The Atlantic called How the Enlightenment Ends.
Big stuff.
For sure.
Heady.
And, well, it's Kissinger. He argued that because we're unable to interrogate the output of algorithms, as we rely on them more and more to classify the world around us, we may actually start to lose the ability to reason for ourselves.
It's not inevitable, though, that AI will always be opaque. The EU are actually working on this policy that decisions made by AI need to be explainable to people they affect.
That may be a policy that's easier said than done, although the so-called next wave of AI is all about explainable